Chapter 1061. Great Wu was officially divided, and Wu Tianming and Wu Dihao became the emperors of Great Wu and New Wu respectively. As Wu Qi had expected, when Wu Dihao officially proclaimed his ascension as the empress in Exen Tripod City, the capital of New Wu, a great deal of imperial aura quickly grew in his body. Wu Dihao's power in Great Wu was higher than Wu Tianming's, and if it had not been for the help of Wu Qi, Gigu, Zi, and Mod, Wu Tianming would have long been turned into his puppet. So, in fact, Wu Dihao was the real master of Great Wu. In Great Wu, 90% of the generals were his disciples, and more than half of the civil officials were his disciples or retainers. With such monstrous power, after Wu Dihao ascended the throne in Exen Tripod City, all the people in half of Great Wu's territory under his control submitted to him, and it was only natural for the imperial aura to grow. In Wu Qi's opinion, the total amount of imperial aura in Wu Dihao's body had quickly surpassed Wu Tianming's. Tao League supported Great Wu, and Buddhism League supported New Wu. The two kingdoms, who shared the same origin, fought fiercely on the 2 days of Wu Dihao's ascension ceremony. After losing hundreds of thousands of soldiers, they had no choice but to retreat. Great Yi supremacy and Reverend Shouju had the same cultivation base, and the number of immortals and Buddhist cultivators under them was equal. Therefore, they were evenly matched. Therefore, when New Wu and Great Wu fought, both of them kept a close eye on their disciples and did not let them join the battle. The war between the two kingdoms was a very orthodox ground war, and there were no immortals or demons in it. At Wu Qi's behest, 2 months after the establishment of New Wu, shocking news came from Great Wu. Great Wu's emperor, Wu Tianming, was ashamed that he had wronged the heaven, the people, and the earth. As the emperor of Great Wu, he had accomplished nothing. Instead of letting the people live and work in peace, he had caused Great Wu and New Wu to go to war, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. Wu Tianming issued an edict to the world, and then, according to the rules of the primitive tribal alliance of the human race and the abdication system of the ancient sacred emperors, he abdicated the throne of Great Wu to Liu Bang, the king of Han, the favored son of heaven. As soon as this self-incrimination edict appeared, saliva immediately gushed out. Wu Dihao jumped out and angrily accused Wu Tianming of being the sinner of the Wu family. How could he give up the Wu family's property to an outsider? Wu Dihao told all the officers and soldiers of New Wu and Great Wu that even though he had a political dispute with Wu Tianming, New Wu and Great Wu were, after all, a family, and this was the story of a quarrel between brothers. By giving Great Wu's foundation to an outsider, Wu Tianming's act was tantamount to betraying his ancestors. Wu Dihao asked the world, is a man like Wu Tianming, who can even sell the foundation of his ancestors, still qualified to be the emperor of Great Wu? New Wu opened its warm and broad chest and welcomed the civil and military officials and common people who were dissatisfied with Wu Tianming to come and join it. Wu Dihao even questioned Liu Bang. It was no longer the era of the primitive tribal alliances of the human race. Great Wu's foundation had been passed down from generation to generation, and it was built by its ancestors with painstaking efforts. Even if Wu Tianming was unscrupulous and could not carry Great Wu forward and make it prosperous, it still had a wise, mighty, and heroic successor, Wu Dihao. Whether in principle or in law, Wu Dihao should be the most suitable successor for Great Wu. If Wu Tianming did not want to be the emperor, let Wu Dihao be the emperor. After all, the most orthodox blood of the Wu family flowed in his veins. If he, Wu Dihao, became the emperor of Great Wu, wouldn't Great Wu and New Wu become one family again? That way, there would be no more disputes, no more wars. But what about you, Liu Bang? You're so unsightly. Wu Tianming said he would abdicate the throne to you, and you're ready to accept it without hesitation? How could you do that? What kind of man are you, Liu Bang? What do you mean by the chosen one? Why have the people of Great Wu never heard of you, the chosen one of the heaven? Why do you accept Wu Tianming's throne? Then, on behalf of Wu Dihao, Great Yi Supremacy used his mighty divine ability to spread Wu Dihao's doubts across the entire Panga continent, so that all the people on the continent could hear his doubts. Emperor Wu Tianming is doing a good job. Why would he suddenly want to pass the throne to you, an outsider who has no reputation. Could it be that you, Liu Bang, have kidnapped Great Wu's emperor and forced him to pass the throne to you? As Wu Dihao cursed, Liu Bang immediately jumped out and started a war of words with him. In any case, Liu Bang was surrounded by Zhang Liang, Xiao He, and a group of eloquent civil officials. They wrote a flowery article to announce to the world that Liu Bang was the chosen one, and that his succession to the throne was in accordance with the will of heaven and the will of the people. After he took over the throne, he would surely seek benefits for the people of Great Wu and let them live and work in peace and contentment. At the same time, Liu Bang's civil officials fervently pointed out that Liu Bang was the best candidate for the human emperor, and that as long as Liu Bang became the human emperor, all the humans in the world would be blessed. As long as Liu Bang became the human emperor, the lifespan of all mortals would be doubled. All the old would be as strong as the young. All the young would be as strong as the mountains, all the women would be as beautiful as flowers, and all the children would be as smart as immortals. All in all, as long as Liu Bang became the human emperor, the benefits of the human race would be great. There would be countless small benefits such as the invincible spear. As long as Liu Bang became the human emperor, the human race would fall into a land of peace and contentment, where everyone would live a long and happy life, have enough to eat, drink, and wear whatever they wanted. That would be the legendary Elysium. So, for the sake of that Elysium, Emperor Haozuan of Diyu, you should stop resisting. You should quickly follow Wu Tianming's example and abdicate the throne of Diyu to Liu Bang. Wouldn't that mean that all the dark clouds in the sky would be dispersed? In the document Liu Bang sent to the world, he solemnly mentioned that as long as Emperor Haozuan abdicated the throne to Liu Bang, when Liu Bang succeeded, he would confer Emperor Haozuan the title of the Supreme Great Celestial Emperor of the Celestial Court, so that he could enjoy immortal happiness forever. Of course, Liu Bang also pointed out righteously that a fiend, like Wu Dihao, who did not understand the heavenly Tao and did things against the will of the people for the sake of glory, splendor, and wealth, would surely be punished by the heavenly Tao and his accomplices who assisted the wicked. Liu Bang even announced the future fate of the great Venerable in the document. His cultivation base would be destroyed, and he would be thrown into the mortal world to be reincarnated for billions of lives without being able to reincarnate. He would either be a beast or a eunuch for the rest of his life. In short, he would not have a good end. Amidst the tumultuous war of words, the auspicious day of Wu Tianming's abdication of the throne to Liu Bang had arrived. Diyu was indifferent. In the eyes of Emperor Haozuan and the others, the abdication ceremony had a unique sacred status, and it was something that only the ancient sacred emperors of the human race were qualified to perform. How sacred and noble was it to choose a great virtue to abdicate the throne of the human emperor and rule the world with great virtue for the benefit of the human race. Compared to the ancient sacred emperors, Liu Bang was nothing. And who the hell was Wu Tianming? How dare he hold the abdication ceremony? The conservative and traditional upper echelons of Diyu treated Great Wu's abdication ceremony as a joke, which did not conform to the etiquette at all. Moreover, in the eyes of the mighty Diyu, what was a tiny Great Wu? Moreover, such a small Great Wu was divided into two dynasties. Diyu would not care if you played with each other, but if you wanted to get involved in the God conferment plan and make things difficult for Diyu, then sorry, Diyu would wipe you out with the force of a thunderbolt. Even the behemoths like the Shizo dynasty and the Ling dynasty had been destroyed, so what was a tiny Great Wu? While New Wu and Great Wu were quarreling, Diyu had fallen into a strange silence. In this strange atmosphere, Wu Tianming's abdication ceremony was unveiled outside the new capital, Chang'an, which Liu Bang had chosen and named himself, with the idea that where there was a liveliness, there was always a chance to take advantage of it. Wu Qi stealthily brought Ao Buzan and Qixia to the city of Chang'an, which was located in the northernmost part of Great Wu's territory. They found a hill to hide on, and Wu Qi concealed their aura and traces with a restrictive formation. As they looked out of the city, Ao Buzan suddenly laughed strangely. Tisk, what a grand occasion. What a grand occasion indeed. Outside the south gate of Chang'an, an altar, 3 miles high, 10 miles wide and 3 miles high, was built with 5-colored soil. The altar was built entirely by the manual labor of the common people, without any immortal magic or Taoist magic. God knew how much manpower and material resources Liu Bang had invested in building such an altar in just 2 months. Above and below the altar and on the ground near it, there were all kinds of flags, countless of which were embroidered with stars in the sky with gold and silver threads. These flags were rippling with faint fluctuations of star power, and their quality was at least that of a supreme-grade gold immortal artifact. A formation composed of countless flags of supreme-grade gold immortal artifact could almost trap and kill a primordial immortal if it was guarded by an extraordinary treasure and presided over by a powerful immortal. Standing on top of the altar were 3,600 carefully selected elders, each wearing a suit of armor. The so-called elders were human men who stood at least 12 feet tall, but did not have the blood of Longbow Kingdom. Holding the banners in their hands, these men stood motionlessly on the altar with their heads held high. It was a wonder where Liu Bang had found these big men. Esteemed Shouzhua was stationed north of the altar with the immortals he had recruited. Gigizi was stationed east of the altar with a group of itinerant immortals and itinerant cultivators. Mod was stationed west of the altar with a group of his disciples and itinerant immortals and itinerant cultivators. To the south of the altar were stationed countless Great Wu soldiers, including all kinds of mountain spirits, water monsters, and other strange creatures. These were the disciples of Wu Qi's underhand sect. They had disguised themselves and used all kinds of excuses to seek refuge in Great Wu, and now all held high positions in Great Wu. In addition to these immortals and itinerant cultivators, there were tens of millions of common people watching the ceremony. Liu Bang loved extravagance. These tens of millions of common people were brought here by his celestial lords with divine abilities, and he had ordered them to stand guard on the surrounding hillsides overnight to watch the show. With tens of millions of people gathered together, those at the back could not see what was happening in front. But this was what Liu Bang wanted. As for whether the common people could see anything or not, it had nothing to do with him. A Taoist dressed in a complicated Taoist robe embroidered with star patterns and 8 trigrams stood in the middle of the altar, carefully observing the movement of the sun in the sky. When the sun shifted to a unique angle in the void, the Taoist cried out in a loud voice, "The auspicious hour is coming. Your Majesties, please come to the altar." Before the Taoist's voice could fade away, esteemed Shouzhua's laughter rang out. Wait! Chapter 1062. In the palace of Dao Origin on the Daluotian continent, the 9 Daozu were all paying attention to what was happening outside Cheng. When Liu Bang and Wu Tianming walked up the altar side by side, the faces of the Daozu all lit up with a smile. The smile was complicated. There was not much joy in it, but a hint of ferocious killing intent. Great Wu was no longer a tool used by the Dao League to seize control of Pangu continent. It would become a millstone that would grind away the power of the Buddhist League inch by inch, until only the 7 old bald thieves were left. Since those 7 greedy fellows had betrayed the secret agreement between the two sides, what was the need for the Buddhist League to exist? Since the Buddhist League wanted to take control of all the laws of heaven, earth, and man in Pangu world, they might as well let them get nothing. The Daozu had promised the Buddhist League that they would control the future underworld and the power of transmigration. But since they were so greedy, he wouldn't leave any benefits for them. Suddenly, purple-browed Daozu chuckled and said, "The breakers are indeed the breakers. I don't think their injuries can be healed so easily, can they?" The other 8 Daozu laughed. They were laughing complacently, although most of their energy was occupied by the list of investiture of the gods, and they could not use all their strength to deal with the Buddhist League. But now, the 7 Buddhist patriarchs were suffering under the mighty power of the 1,000-headed demon, and the Buddhist League was at their weakest now. It was the perfect time to catch them all in one fell swoop. Liu Bang walked up the altar step by step, but as soon as he and the haggard Wu Tianming stepped onto the altar, the shout of Reverend Shouzhua made him freeze on the spot. Frowning, Liu Bang turned and looked down at esteemed Shouzhua, who stood at the front of the crowd of immortals. Forcing a smile on his face, Liu Bang asked, "May I ask why you stopped me, Grand Heaven Master?" Esteemed Shouzhua sneered and said coolly, I'm afraid your majesty is too happy and has forgotten many things. Oh, cut the crap. Where are the benefits that his majesty promised me? 9 primordial supreme treasures, a position with real power as the great celestial emperor, and a promise from the 9 Daozu himself. No matter what happens, no one will plot against my position as the great celestial emperor, right? Lu Bang blinked his eyes and looked at Reverend Shou Zhuo hesitantly. He was already planning to burn the bridge after crossing it. The 28 celestial lords of constellations flashed and stood between esteemed Shou Zhuo and the altar. A faint beam of starlight rose from the top of their heads, ready to inject their natal star forces into their bodies at any time. All the 28 celestial lords of the 28 constellations knew that Shou Zhuo Shangren's cultivation was profound and his supernatural power was boundless. If Shou Zhuo Shangren suddenly attacked and killed Lu Bang, Taoism would really be in a difficult position. How could they find another suitable candidate? Laughing out loud, Priest Shou Zhuo shook his head, sighed, and said, "Your Majesty, are you going to do that treacherous thing? If that's the case, don't blame me for following suit. Believe it or not, Your Majesty, I can kill Your Majesty and all the celestial lords here with just a thought." The naked threat of death, the naked threat of the future human emperor on the sacred and solemn abdication ceremony, the naked threat of the future human emperor, and the naked demand for benefits in front of tens of millions of people watching the ceremony. The words of Superior Shou Zhuo made the atmosphere of the ceremony extremely strange. The people whispered to each other at the same time, and their voices turned into a loud buzzing sound, as if countless bees were flying in the air. Lu Bang's face flickered slightly. He pondered for a moment, then looked up into the sky and whispered a few words. He knew that the 9 Daozu and the almighty experts of the Dao League were paying attention to what was happening here. Although the 9 supreme treasures of primordial was the price Lu Bang had offered to Reverend Shou Zhuo, it was a little painful to ask the Dao League to come up with 9 supreme treasures of primordial just to exchange for Great Wu. In the primordial Dao Palace, the 9 Daozu were silent. 9 primordial supreme treasures. Although the 9 Dao ancestors were rich, over the countless years, the chaos fiend gods of the past had fallen one after another. Nearly half of their intrinsic dermic artifacts had fallen into the hands of the 9 Dao ancestors. However, among so many chaos fiend celestial gods' personal treasures, there were very few Grand Mist supreme treasures. It was a little hard to accept that they had to hand over 9 treasures at once just for Great Wu. Back then, Monk Xiang Chan and Lu Bang were bidding for it, which was why the Dao sect offered such a sky-high price. But now that Great Wu had been divided, the Buddhist League had taken over New Wu, and the Dao League had only gotten half of its territory and people. As for the price, green-browed Daozu cleared his throat, his lips moving slightly as he quietly said a few words to the air. Standing on the altar, Lu Bang cocked his head and listened for a while, then hurried down the altar. Too lazy to care about the auspicious day, he walked quickly up to Reverend Shou Zhuo, reached out his right hand, and shook the latter's right hand. The wide sleeve of his robe blocked their palms, making them look like brokers negotiating prices in the cattle and horses market. Putting out a finger and pressing it on Reverend Shou Zhuo's palm, Lu Bang smiled and said, "Great Heaven Master, the price I offered that day was for a complete Great Wu. But now I've only got half of Great Wu, and all the elite soldiers have been taken away by that bastard Wu Dihao. What I've got is an empty shell." Pressing the finger hard on Reverend Shou Zhuo's palm a few times, Lu Bang said with a smile, "What do you think? An empty Great Wu for this price? You've got a great bargain. Well, as for the throne of the great celestial emperor." Lu Bang glanced left and right, then sighed hypocritically and said, "That's going to be troublesome. After all, you know that the few great celestial emperors are my seniors, and the South Emperor is my father. If they don't want to give up the throne, why don't we do this? You can choose a blessed land on Pangu continent and give you a territory equivalent to 800 provinces of Great Yu. This land will belong to you forever, and no one from the Dao League will ever step into it. How about you close your door and call yourself the sect of Daozu?" As soon as Lu Bang finished speaking, Reverend Shou Zhuo kicked Lu Bang away. It was a vicious kick, as the tip of his foot brushed past the vital part of Lu Bang's lower body. Liu Bang let out a miserable howl as he was sent flying hundreds of feet away by the kick and fell on his face in a sorry state. The 28 celestial lords roared at the same time. But as soon as they did, a beam of starlight rushed out of the top of Reverend Shoujua's head. Accompanied by a faint fragrance, the celestial tower, which was refined with the white lotus of great purity and the 108,000 great Tao of ancient stars, poured out of the starlight. The vast star power in the void was frozen by the tower's tremendous power. The 28 celestial lords roared in horror, for they had lost contact with their natal stars. A bunch of good-for-nothings. Who do you think you are without the power of your natal stars? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? Reverend Shoujua pointed a finger out, and 56 beams of golden light shot out. The beams of golden light took the shape of hooks and shot toward the shoulders of the 28 celestial lords. Blood splattered everywhere as their shoulder blades were torn apart by the hooks. They howled miserably as they were hooked up by the golden beams, hanging in midair like pigs and dogs waiting to be slaughtered, struggling and twisting. These hooks were the soul separation hooks, an extraordinary magical artifact that Reverend Shoujua had personally refined over the past few years. When the 28 celestial lords' shoulder blades were pierced by the hooks, they felt their blood, energy, and spirit constantly spurting out from their wounds. Their bodies gradually became weak and their cultivation base, which was originally at the peak of gold immortal realm, plummeted. In just a few breaths of time, their cultivation base had dropped by 3 to 5 tiers. For immortals, one's cultivation base was more precious than one's life. When the cultivation base of the 28 celestial lords suddenly dropped by 3 to 5 tiers, they screamed and screamed in fear. They frantically tried to pull the golden beams off their shoulders, but their hands were bleeding and their bones were broken. How could they move the golden beams? With blood dripping from the corner of his mouth, Liu Bang struggled to lift his head from the ground. He stared blankly at the 28 celestial lords, who were hung in midair as a warning. Stars flashed before his eyes, and he nearly fainted from anger. They were 28 celestial lords. As long as any one of them channeled their natal star power into their body, they would immediately possess the cultivation base of the first tier of Tao-breaking realm. When they joined hands and laid out the 4-element star formation, even a great sect leader like Daozu's first disciple could not escape. But before they could channel their natal star power, they were hung up just like that. Liu Bang's biggest reliance on this trip had disappeared, and his courage had suddenly weakened by more than 10 times. Staring blankly at the 28 celestial lords, Liu Bang pursed his lips and looked up helplessly at the sky. Reverend Shoujua snorted coldly and snapped, "It's true that men die for wealth, and birds die for food. Wu Tianming, you don't have to play any tricks anymore. The Tao League is heartless, and I'm unjust. Issue the edict now and give Great Wu's foundation to Wu Dihao, and I'll guarantee you a lifetime of wealth and prosperity." Laughing strangely, Reverend Shoujua looked in the direction of the territory of New Wu and cried out sternly, "I know you can hear me, bald donkey day. Be straightforward. What benefits can the Buddhist League give me? The whole of Great Wu belongs to the Buddhist League. As for the Emperor aura in Wu Tianming's body, I'll transfer it to Wu Dihao." An earth-shattering Buddhist chant rang through the clouds, and Reverend Dei's wild laughter came from afar. "You're making a wise move, Ox Nose. The people of the Tao League are so treacherous. Why are you working with them? You'll have boundless blessings if you join the Buddhist League. Hey, bald donkey Shangchen, what benefits can the Buddha give to Shoujua?" It was a blatant deal. Both the Buddhas and Daozu, who witnessed it with their divine sense, could not help but curse in their hearts. Where did these 2 supreme-grade wild fox Dhyanas come from? They are worse than the butchers in the marketplace. But in the blink of an eye, the few Buddhas were overjoyed. If Wu Tianming joined the Buddhist League, Great Wu would be in their pocket, and the Tao League would have no more tricks. How could they find a suitable candidate for the human emperor in such a short time? Where could they find a power that could fight against you? The 7 Buddhas immediately began to calculate how many benefits they should give Reverend Shoujua. The price could not be low, but it could not be too high, or they would suffer a loss. Just as the 7 Daozu were racking their brains, A faint rumble of thunder rang out of the void, and 9 dazzling balls of light suddenly tore through the void and appeared in front of Reverend Shouzhua. Shouzhua, Daozu's majestic voice rang through the universe. The 9 of us have jointly conferred you the title of the 7th Celestial Emperor of the Celestial Court, the Great Celestial Emperor of the Celestial Court. When the apotheosis of gods is successful, you will be in charge of the god of mountains, the god of earth, the god of rivers, and the god of water, ruling over all living beings and maintaining the peace of the universe. Then, Daozu's voice rang out one after another. The 9 of us have conferred you the title of the Great Celestial Emperor of the Celestial Emperor of the Celestial Court forever. Even if there are billions of apocalypses, we will protect you and keep you safe. No one in the universe can kill you, and we, the 9 Daozu, will never hurt you. Reverend Shouzhua smiled contentedly. He cupped his fist and bowed to Liu Bang, who was lying on the ground, and said, "Your Majesty, the auspicious time has come." Chapter 1063. Outside Chang, and Wu Tianming, with a long face, abdicated the throne of Great Wu to Liu Bang in front of tens of millions of people, immortals, and demons. When Liu Bang took the scepter that represented Great Wu's imperial power from Wu Tianming, a shrill and sonorous dragon roar rang out of Wu Tianming's body. 9 golden dragons, each about 10 feet long and wrapped in purple mist, flew out of Wu Tianming's forehead, circled 3 times in the air, and then plunged into Liu Bang's body. For a moment, Liu Bang's body shone with a golden light, and his slightly cunning and oily face suddenly became resolute. A vast and domineering aura poured out of him. Purple mist flickered in Liu Bang's eyes, and his every move was naturally imbued with boundless majesty. It was true that Liu Bang was once the founding emperor in the mortal world, but how many people did the Han dynasty have when it was founded? Great Wu had trillions of people, and even though Wu Dihao had taken away half of them, the emperor aura in Wu Tianming was still thousands of times stronger than that of Liu Bang. Now that the emperor aura had entered Liu Bang's body, all kinds of magical effects naturally came with it. Liu Bang, whose cultivation base had reached the realm of Gold Immortal, immediately controlled the emperor aura with Daozu's secret technique. Accompanied by a dragon roar, Liu Bang's cultivation base soared, and in just a quarter of an hour, he had broken through the realm of primordial. Seeing that Liu Bang had absorbed the emperor aura gushing out of Wu Tianming's body, Lord Shouzhua could not help but burst out laughing. He was so happy that he had obtained 9 supreme treasures of primordial and the title of Great Celestial Emperor. The harvest this time was simply wonderful. In the capital of New Wu, One Heart City, Lord Shouzhua sat high in the main hall of the imperial palace, and his seat was even higher than that of Wu Dihao, the emperor of New Wu. Monk Xiang Chan and the other Buddhist supreme figures stood in the main hall and ignored the obvious overstepping of the boundary. Even the fastidious emperor, Wu Dihao himself, stood obediently beside Great Yi Venerable and spoke humbly as if he was his servant. Feeling the majestic imperial aura coming from Chang and city, the Dei Venerable said angrily, "None of these ox noses are reliable." "Well, little monk Xiang Chan, I have handed New Wu over to the Buddhist League. As for the benefits promised by Buddha, hee." Before monk Xiang Chan could speak, a fragrant wind drifted in the hall, and a tall and thin figure appeared out of thin air. Buddha Guardian will silently walked out of the void, clad in a thin robe and standing atop a white lotus. He looked at Venerable Dei and said lightly, "Dei, this old monk will keep his will." Taken aback, Great Yi rose to his feet, put his palms together, and bowed to Buddha Guardian Will. "Greetings, Buddha Guardian Will, and I wish you a long and boundless life." The Great Yi Venerable, who had always given others the impression of being blunt, violent, and even barbaric, walked down from his throne and respectfully followed the Buddhist etiquette and bowed to the Buddha 3 times, completing the entire set of etiquette meticulously and respectfully. Gautama's sentinel gladly accepted Great Yi's greeting. Without even looking at Wu Dihao, he stepped on a white lotus and climbed onto the throne, then sat down where Great Yi had been sitting just now. Wu Dihao took a few steps back in panic and bowed his head respectfully, not daring to look Buddha Guardian Will in the eye. He knew very well that in front of these almighty experts, he was the most humble chess piece. If he was not respectful, he would not even know how he died. What the Buddhist League wanted was only the identity of the Emperor of New Wu and the imperial aura in his body. If he dared to disobey the Buddha, these merciful monks of the Buddhist League would definitely have 10,000 ways to kill him, take away the imperial aura in his body, and give it to the heir chosen by the Buddhist League, who might be Wu Dihao's son or grandson. For the sake of the throne, his son or grandson would never mind killing him with their own hands. Buddha Showell stared down at the Great Unity Paragon from high above, while the Great Unity Paragon raised his head and stared back at Buddha Showell in high spirits. Buddha Guardian Will nodded and smiled appreciatively. Compared with the Buddhist League's revered ones and Buddhas, Great E had a strong wildness about him, a wildness full of vitality. This wildness was exactly what the almighty experts of the Buddhist League lacked nowadays. After enjoying the worship of believers and incense for countless years, the almighty experts of the Buddhist League were like real wooden statues, always giving off a sense of lifelessness. On the other hand, the E's supremacy was completely different. He was full of vitality and his methods were brutal and direct. This brutal and direct method was extremely effective. At least from the few times the E supremacy attacked, he always had the upper hand. Those who went against him did not have a good ending. While monk Xiangchan was still trying to persuade Wu Tianming to join the Buddhist League, Great E had already sent someone to hook up with Wu Dihao and let him join the Buddhist League. Such scheming, such means, and such strength, he was truly a first-class talent. The most amazing thing was that Great E was a disciple of the Buddhist League, which innately made Buddha Guardian Will feel close to him. After pondering for a moment, Buddha Guardian Will said in a deep voice, "Great E, I can fulfill all the conditions that my senior brother promised Reverend Shozhua." Great E grinned and said, "So, Lord Buddha, I can fuse with the Tao too." Buddha Guardian Will just shook his head and smiled. After a long while, he said slowly, "I will teach you all that I have learned in my life through the wisdom imbuement technique. However, this old monk's Tao is not necessarily your Tao. I can use it to fuse with the Tao, but you may not be able to walk through this Tao. So, it is hard to say whether you can succeed or not." Looking appreciatively at Great E, Buddha Guardian Will smiled and said, "The 7 of us have discussed it. If you can fuse with the Tao, you will be the Lord of Mount Gridrakuta. In the Buddhist League, your position is only below the 7 of us, and you will be the leader of all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and boundless saints." Great E stared at Buddha Guardian Will with wide eyes. The Lord of Mount Gridrakuta? Why does he sound like the Lord of the Mountain? Buddha Guardian Will's face froze, and he almost coughed up blood at Great Yi's words. The Lord of Mount Gridrakuta? The Lord of Mount Gridrakuta. His position was even higher than the Buddhist Lord of the Buddhist League, and yet he called him the Lord of the Mountain? This was a boorish man, a straightforward man. Buddha Guardian Will kept telling himself that there was no need to quibble with a boorish man like him. He took a deep breath and smiled, then nodded. "You are a disciple of the Buddhist League, the junior of us 7. If you can fuse with the Tao, you will not be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with us. That is why if you can, you will be the Lord of Mount Gridrakuta, ranking above the many saints of the Buddhist League." Great E smiled brilliantly and said bluntly, "Buddha, please grant this humble monk the wisdom imbuement technique." If this humble monk is one of the many saints of the Buddhist League, it would be ridiculous if I didn't have at least 1 or 2 trump cards. Buddha Shui chuckled at Master De Yi's words and pointed a finger at him. "You're not holding back at all, you baldy." He cursed. Monk Incense Zen and the other Buddhist powerhouses all had a strange look on their faces. Anyone else would have been ganged up on by Monk Incense Zen and the others, but this was Buddha Guardian Will. But the one cursing was Buddha Shui. What could they do? Besides, the 7 Buddhist patriarchs were dressed like Taoists, so Buddha Guardian Will was right to call them baldy. There was nothing they could do about it. Fading away his smile, Buddha Guardian Will glared at Supremacy Great E and said coldly, "When I perform the wisdom imbuement technique, I will transfer the power I have cultivated for 100 eons to you. This is a great fortune. However, There have been many traders in the Buddhist League recently. I will use the wisdom imbuement technique to teach you the profound truths of the Great Tao, and at the same time, search for the secrets of your millions of reincarnations. Are you willing? Great E glared at him and laughed. There is nothing shameful about this humble monk. Just do as you wish, Buddha. Delighted, Buddha Guardian will beckon for Great E to sit cross-legged in front of him. He placed one hand on Great Yi's head, causing motes of golden light to seep out of his palm and slowly flow into Great Yi's body. Soon, both Supremacy Dei and Buddha Showil were enveloped in layers of Buddhist light. Buddha Showil's 6-headed, 18-armed, 4-legged golden body was vaguely visible within the light. Behind the golden body was the illusory image of an exotic beast with a pair of wings on its back, its entire body covered in dazzling golden light, its body shaped like a lion, and its body was pitch black. This strange beast was the true form of Buddha Guardian Will that was born in the chaos, the nightmare soul. It was born with the ability to peer into the souls of others and absorb the power emanated by their souls for its own use. Such talents were most suited to the cultivation of the Buddhist League, which was why Buddha Guardian Will founded the Buddhist League with the other 6 like-minded chaos demon gods. The nightmare soul beast's thousands of eyes shot out pitch-black divine light at the same time, locking onto Great Yi's vital acupoints, especially his 7 orifices, the crown of his head, the center of his brow, and the other passageways through which his soul entered and exited his body. The inconceivably huge Gautama Buddha's soul tore through the defense of the Great Unity Supremacy's sea of consciousness. The Great Unity Supremacy's shining golden soul was exposed to the Gautama Guardian Buddha. Shrouded in a strange black divine light, the will-guarding Buddha's soul rushed to the Great E Supremacy's soul and began to search it inch by inch. In the past, the 7 Buddhas would never treat their disciples like this, for fear that they would incur unease and fear. But now was a time of crisis, and the Buddhist League was fraught with internal troubles, so they could not afford any more disturbances. Even if the search of the soul would displease Great E, Buddha Guardian Will couldn't care less. As long as he wasn't a spy planted by the Tao sect or someone else, the 7 Buddhist ancestors would wholeheartedly nurture him and put him in an important position. Great Yi's divine soul was empty, and there were not many things in it. He was born a bandit in this life, occupying a small kingdom on a planet in outer heavenly realm, killing people, arson, and raping women. One day, he robbed and killed a wandering monk and learned a mantra from the monk. Suddenly, he was enlightened, laid down his butcher's knife, and became a monk. After spending 100 years as an arhat, Great E worked hard to accumulate a sum of energy stones, then left the small planet for Pangu continent. He cultivated in seclusion in the Great Dragon Mountain range, meditating for countless years, going through countless hardships and dangers, and finally achieving the cultivation base he had today. Buddha Shui nodded in satisfaction. From the looks of it, the Grand E Supremacy wasn't a problem. After that, he exercised a mystic art of the Buddhist League and examined the scenes of Great Yi's previous life with the transmigration technique. All sorts of miraculous scenes appeared before Guarding Will's eyes, which made him chuckle in both surprise and delight, his scrawny face filled with a smile. Chapter 1064. However, no one knew who had taken away Zhang Tingyun's protective primordial treasure, killed Zhang Tingyun, and caused the collapse of the Ling dynasty. The 9 Daozu were in a hurry to find a replacement, so Liu Bang got the great benefit. In the newly renovated Hall of Translucence in the 33 Heavens, 6 great celestial emperors sat facing each other. Moreover, the candidates for the 6 great celestial emperors of the Celestial Court were in accordance with the law of the Heavenly Tao, and the Celestial Court only needed 6 great celestial emperors. Now, Daozu had promised that esteemed Shozhua would be the 7th great celestial emperor. Did that not mean that one of them was going to die? When they thought of the benefits that esteemed Shozhua had received, and then looked at themselves, there was no need to mention their mixed feelings. They had started cultivating as a mortal, gone through countless life and death tribulations, became a gold immortal in 100,000 years, became a primordial immortal after 3 eons, and finally reached the peak of primordial immortal after 3 eons, and was only one step away from stepping into the realm of Tao breaking. In the position of celestial emperor, they would enjoy all the wealth and glory that mortals could not imagine, including rare treasures of heaven and earth, spirit pills, divine abilities, mystic techniques, and beautiful fairies. The South Emperor sneered and said, "The great celestial emperor of Ziwei Linging is only 2 words different from the title of the great celestial emperor of Ziwei Linging. The others are the celestial emperors who have been promised by Daozu. They are much luckier than us." Whenever a few of them died, Daozu would issue a decree and appoint a few more. That was how the great celestial emperors of the celestial court were passed down from generation to generation. Generations of celestial emperors were destroyed, and generations of celestial emperors were reappointed. The Tao League did not lack a few primordial immortals of the realm of Tao reasoning. It was enough for them to have complete control over the celestial court, the authority that ruled the 3 realms, in fact and in name. The fact that Liu Bang was chosen as the human emperor was something that the South Emperor had never dreamed of. If he had known that something like this would happen, he would have treated Liu Bang better. But then again, if he had not disliked Liu Bang and used him as a tool to suppress the world of mortals, how could Liu Bang have accumulated the aura of the human sovereign when he was reincarnated in the human world? If he didn't have the Renhuang Qi with him, he wouldn't have been able to become the Renhuang. Great Celestial Emperor Zui Linging's face turned even more unsightly. Today, the 6 great celestial emperors had secretly gathered for the sake of preserving the title of Great Celestial Emperor that esteemed Zhua had obtained. Since ancient times, there had only been 6 celestial emperors. The central one was the Great Celestial Emperor Ziwei Linging, followed by the 5 directions celestial emperors. Celestial Long Emperor had said, Celestial Wu Palace's Yi Ming would say. Celestial Spirit, Celestial Tian, Celestial. But now, the apocalypse of heaven and earth had come, and everything was about to be destroyed. The other 5 celestial emperors sighed at the same time, and for a moment, the hall of luminosity was filled with sighs of bitterness. The 6 celestial emperors, who held the power of the celestial court, sighed faintly, frowned, and stared blankly at the ground 3 feet in front of them, their eyes staring blankly. Heaven had pity on them. Despite their high status, they were only rewarded with a supreme artifact of primal when they ascended the throne. The North Star Celestial Emperor in particular had lent his sky-veiling flag of chaos to Liu Bang, but Liu Bang had lost it. If Liu Bang had not been chosen by Daozu to be the human emperor, the North Star Celestial Emperor would have wanted to strangle him to death. If Liu Bang had been a filial son and became the human emperor, the South Star Celestial Emperor would have been overjoyed. According to the calculation of the 9 Daozu, Liu Bang had become the human emperor, and Liu Bang had become a saint by virtue of virtue. In the future, he would be the lord of the heaven realm and the mortal realm. With Liu Bang's power, the South Star Celestial Emperor did not have to worry about anything happening to himself. "I can't accept this." Ziwei Linging Great Celestial Emperor sneered. The other celestial emperors did not say a word. They frowned and sighed deeply again. Ziwei Linging was the 1000th celestial emperor of the celestial court. All the celestial emperors before him had fallen in the apocalypse of heaven and earth. As the lord of the celestial court, they were mighty and lofty, but in fact, how many people could they control? In particular, Daozu had appointed the 7th celestial emperor, promised him such great power, and even rewarded him with 9 supreme treasures of primal. Sighing faintly, Ziwei Linging said coldly, "Violet Spirit Great Celestial Emperor, you are only 2 characters away from my title. Could it be that Reverend Shouzhua is the candidate to take over my throne?" Liu Bang was different from Zhang Tingyun. Zhang Tingyun was a lucky man who was doted on by millions of Tao League members, and was personally selected by the 9 Daozu to be the candidate for the seal of the human emperor. In order to cultivate Zhang Tingyun's aura, the 9 Daozu had personally escorted him through tens of thousands of reincarnations, allowing Zhang Tingyun to build a mighty Ling dynasty in outer heavenly realms that was strong enough to rival Diu. Burning in the incense burner was the purple-striped fragrant silk leaf plucked from the chaos, an extremely useful yet useless natural treasure. The smoke produced by the burning of these leaves was the most fragile thing in the world. Any external force, or even the mere thought of the purple smoke produced by the burning of these purple fragrant silk leaves, would cause the smoke to shatter and emit strange sounds. The heaven immortals who ascended from the lower realms were under their control, the unknown celestial lords were under their jurisdiction, and the ordinary soldiers and generals were under their command. Apart from that, all the power was in the hands of the 99 great sect masters of the Tao League in the 33 heavens. The 6 great celestial emperors exchanged glances and rose to their feet at the same time. The other side of the mirror showed the scene within capital Wu. The E Supremacy was sitting cross-legged on his throne, and behind him, there was an intense golden light shining in all directions. The E Supremacy was shrouded in the golden light and didn't move an inch. With the cultivation base of the South Dipper Great Emperor and the mirror in front of him, which was also a rare treasure, he could not see who the figure in the golden light was. The other great celestial emperors twitched their mouths. Daozu promised esteemed Shozhua that he would not fall, but he did not give them such a promise. But today, the 6 great celestial emperors sat facing each other, without a single maid or guard around them. They burned the purple-striped fragrant silk leaf that they had painstakingly collected. Faint purple smoke filled the air, and no one in Pangu world could eavesdrop on their conversation. They were not satisfied. Even if it was a mighty figure of the Tao-fusing realm, if their divine senses tried to approach the Hall of Translucence, their divine senses would shatter the purple smoke and attract the attention of the 6 great celestial emperors. The greatest effect of the purple-striped fragrant silk leaf was to prevent the peeping of Tao-fusing realm sages. This was an extremely useful attribute, but also an extremely useless one. This Supremacy Dei has a good fortune. Buddha personally enlightened him, the South Dipper Emperor said darkly. The South Emperor said darkly, I don't know which Buddha did it. This wild monk is really lucky. The great celestial emperor, Ziwei Lingying, sat in the middle. He stroked his long beard and suddenly sighed softly. The 9 supreme treasures of Primal were in charge of all the gods of mountain and water on Pangu continent. Not only that, but the 9 Daozu had also promised him that he would not fall. That was to say, no matter what esteemed Shozhua did, the 9 Daozu had promised him that he would never fall. If a heaven immortal who transcended his heavenly tribulation became a gold immortal, he would usually be taken in as a disciple by the sect masters. Among the 84,000 celestial lords in the universe, the strongest group of celestial lords were nominally under the jurisdiction of the great celestial emperors, but in fact, they took orders directly from the sect masters. Ordinary gold immortals and heaven immortals obeyed the orders of the great celestial emperors, but the divine monarchs, and immortal kings were the disciples of their respective sect masters. How could the 6 great celestial emperors control them? Indeed, these runes would shatter as soon as they were touched by the slightest external force. Back to what the great celestial emperor had said when he teased the South Dipper Emperor just now. If Liu Bang was a filial son, the South Dipper Emperor could rely on Liu Bang's influence to avoid taking too much risk. After all, the Daozu had to take the human emperor's face into consideration. Self-deprecation, pity, sorrow, and even a deep sense of ridicule. The lives of the lofty great celestial emperors were not under their control. Just like the thousands of great celestial emperors in the past, when the apocalypse of heaven and earth came, they would be the first to die. For the Tao League, the death of a few great celestial emperors was nothing. The 99 sect masters were all almighty experts in the realm of Tao breaking, and some of their disciples were primordial immortals in the realm of Tao reasoning. With a long sigh, the South Dipper Emperor cast aside these troubled emotions. Since he could not rely on this son of his, he had to find a way himself. How many people in the world were worth the divine sense of a Tao-fusing saint? When they thought of the thousands of great celestial emperors of the celestial court who had fallen, and then thought of their own treatment, the 6 great celestial emperors felt sour in their hearts. 36 purple gold incense burners, each several feet tall, surrounded the entire translucent hall. Plumes of purple smoke rose from them, interweaving into a thin layer of fragrant mist over the hall. Looking at it with his Dharma eyes, he could see that the thin layer of mist was composed of countless tiny runes, wriggling in the air like tadpoles, as if they would shatter at the slightest touch. It was one thing to be constrained in power, but the problem was that the lives of the few great celestial emperors were not under his control. It was a ridiculous feeling. With a cold snort, the South Dipper Emperor flicked his sleeve and produced a mirror of light. The mirror was divided into two parts. One was the scene of Liu Bang receiving the abdication ceremony outside the city of Cheng. As the 9 streams of dragon-shaped aura of the human emperor entered his body, Liu Bang's spirit, energy, and soul had obviously undergone a great change. His cultivation base had advanced by leaps and bounds, and he was now strong enough to compete with the 6 great celestial emperors. But, even if Liu Bang found his conscience and took good care of the South Dipper Emperor, what about the other 5 great celestial emperors? The problem was that Liu Bang was definitely not a filial son. He was cruel and merciless, with a glib tongue and a cunning heart, and he often turned his back on others. He often burned bridges after crossing the river. Only the South Dipper Emperor himself knew how he treated Liu Bang. He clearly realized that if Liu Bang had enough power, he would kill him with his own hands. It's not easy for me to sit in this position after hundreds of eons of hard work. The great celestial emperor sneered. Tao-fusing saints are not allowed to interfere in the investiture of the gods. Now, the Tao League has schemed against Yu and put Yu in a miserable state. With the temperament of the Wahuang clan, how could she not retaliate? If one day, Yu's army invades the celestial court, will Daozu promise to protect us? The South Dipper Emperor's face darkened. He bit his lower lip with his white teeth and did not say a word for a long time. After a long time, he sighed and said, "Why are you sighing, South Dipper? Your son is expected to become the human emperor. No matter what, for the sake of Liu Bang, at least you can take care of yourself. As for us..." Chapter 1065. On a hillside outside Chang, Wu Qi sat on the ground with a smile on his face. His divine sense was connected with Reverend Shoujua's, and he was proudly counting the huge harvest of the 9 supreme treasures of primordial. Sure enough, murder and arson were the golden belts, and only by stealing and deceiving could one become rich enough to rival a kingdom. As the saying went, the thief would kill the thief who stole the kingdom. He had sold Great Wu with his incarnation and obtained 9 supreme treasures. The 3 offensive supreme treasures were the double tiger seals, the Yin and Yang talisman, and the Daluo umbrella. The 3 defensive supreme treasures were the purple robe, the clear robe, and the soap silk armor. The 3 auxiliary supreme treasures were the spatial pearl, the spirit breeding ring, and the soul cleansing jade. Each of the 9 supreme treasures had its own magical functions, especially the 3 auxiliary supreme treasures. The spatial pearl could form a world of its own, nurturing endless life force. The spirit-breeding ring could provide endless natural energy. The soul-cleansing jade could resist the invasion of all fiends and destroy all spirit creatures, turning them into divine sense and energy to strengthen one's divine soul. It could be said that as long as one had these 3 auxiliary supreme treasures of primordial, even a pig could cultivate to the realm of Tao breaking in a short time. The 3 defensive supreme treasures could protect at least hundreds of people, but as long as a strong person was in charge of them, they could protect at least hundreds of people. The power of the supreme treasures of primordial could not be used on just one person. For example, if Wu Qi tried the soap silk armor himself, with his overall strength, he could protect 100 provinces in Great Yu from any natural calamity. The 3 offensive supreme treasures delighted Wu Qi even more. The double tiger seals had the power to shatter the stars, the Yin and Yang talisman had the power to distort time and space, and the Daluo umbrella had the power to turn everything into chaos. Any one of them was a supreme treasure with great power. Wu Qi happened to lack a powerful offensive magical artifact, and the heaven-pacifying sword's lethality was far less than the supreme treasures of primordial. Daozu is indeed the Daozu, so generous. Wu Qi nodded with a smile and said, "But Buddha is not at a disadvantage either. He is very generous." In the great hall of the imperial palace of Nu Wu, Buddha guarding Will was searching for Supremacy's divine soul. However, when the divine soul of guarding Will Buddha entered Great E Revered's divine soul, all the memories of his true self were sucked away by Wu Qi. What was left were the divine soul memories that Wu Qi retrieved with a mystic technique from Scroll of Stealing. This secret technique was called the soul transference spell. It was similar to the shadow transference technique or the technique of substituting one person for another. In the nether realm of Wu Qi and Yuan Ling, there was an ancient divine wood called the Vajra dragon taming wood. It was strong and sturdy, and was one of the toughest pre-world divine woods. Ordinary pre-world metals were not as tough as the Vajra dragon taming wood. In his previous life, Lord Yuan Ling, who was wandering in the chaos space, had seen this Vajra dragon subduing tree in the midst of transforming. However, it was attacked by the endless thunderbolts in the chaos space, which severely damaged its vitality, and even its divine soul, which had just taken shape, was destroyed. Yuan Ling was a good collector of all kinds of spirit trees and spirit herbs. So, he immediately put the Vajra dragon taming wood into his Yuan Ling's nether realm and carefully cultivated it. After so many years, the Vajra dragon taming wood had lost too much of its energy, and its divine soul had just recovered a little. Then, Wu Qi moved the trace of its divine soul into Supremacy's divine soul with the soul transference spell and fused it with the latter's divine soul. Buddha guarding Will searched through Supremacy's previous life, and found that the memories of Supremacy's current life were all simulated by Wu Qi, which was also simulated by the mystic arts in Scroll of Stealing. Even so, Buddha guarding Will could not find any clues. He searched through the memories of Supremacy's previous life, and the result was that he saw a Vajra dragon taming wood that stood tens of thousands of miles tall amidst the chaos like a huge mountain. It was being bombarded by countless thunderbolts, and after struggling for 36,000 years, its true form was broken by the thunderbolts, and its divine soul was destroyed. So, this is the divine soul of an innate divine wood, the Vajra dragon taming wood. Buddha guarding Will was so excited that he almost danced with joy. The origin of an innate divine wood, the Vajra dragon taming wood, was extraordinary. There were all kinds of strange creatures in the chaos fiend gods, including birds, beasts, and spirit trees and spirit herbs. The Vajra dragon taming wood was known as the strongest innate divine wood, and its innate talent was simply too strong. It was a pity that it did not succeed in transforming, or else the chaos fiend gods would have one more extraordinarily strong existence. This is the blessing of the Buddhism League. Buddha guarding Will clenched his jaws tightly to prevent himself from laughing out loud. Like the lotus, Bodhi tree, and mandala flower, the Vajra dragon taming wood had an aura similar to that of the Buddhism League, and was a precious spirit item of the Buddhism League. Now, there were Vajra dragon taming wood planted on the Great Vulture Mountain as well, but they were all acquired, and no one knew how many generations of descendants of this Vajra dragon taming wood. It turned out that Supremacy was the reincarnation of the Vajra dragon taming wood. This was fate, this was fate. No wonder he could cultivate to his current level with the simplest sutra, even though he was just a mortal. This was the fate between him and the Buddhism League. Buddha guarding Will was beaming with joy. If Monk Incense Chan and the other Buddhist disciples weren't waiting on him, he would have laughed out loud without a care for his status. His spiritual power kept surging into Supremacy's mind, carefully searching every nook and cranny of his soul, afraid that he would have missed out on any clues. At the same time, Buddha guarding Will's Buddhist energy, which he had cultivated for 100 eons, was also being channeled into Supremacy's body. A strange fragrance wafted out of Supremacy's body, and a golden fluid that was as sticky as honey actually oozed out of his pores. The fluid emitted a rich plant fragrance and contained an immense life force. Under the augmentation of Buddha guarding Will's immense energy, Supremacy's body grew taller and his muscles became more defined. An incomparably domineering and violent aura spread out from his body. Inside Wu Qi's Yuan Ling's nether realm, the dragon-taming Vajra wood was withering away. Using a secret art, Wu Qi injected all of its life essence into Supremacy's body. Using Buddha guarding Will's immense energy, Supremacy slowly fused himself with the dragon-taming Vajra wood. His body grew stronger and stronger, and the power it contained grew greater as well. However, in Buddha guarding will's perspective, the Buddhist energy he injected had activated Supremacy's innate abilities from his past life, and was now bringing out some of the wonders of the dragon-taming Vajra wood. Buddha guarding will nodded in satisfaction. It was indeed Vajra dragon-taming wood, and the liquid flowing out was the special resin of the wood. Quite a few spirit pills and medicines of the Buddhist League were made from the resin of the wood, which had the magical effect of strengthening the muscles and bones and increasing one's energy. Some of the golden body divine abilities of the Buddhist League could only be successfully cultivated with the help of this resin. Of course, the resin secreted by the dragon-taming Vajra wood was nowhere near as fragrant as the resin flowing out of Supremacy's body. In terms of quality, they were worlds apart. It really is dragon-taming Vajra wood, the reincarnation of a primordial heavenly wood. He is indeed fated with Buddhism. Although this kid is a little hot-tempered, he has a pure heart. Compared to those ignorant disciples, this kid can be of great use. Buddha guarding will quickly used his divine sense to communicate with the other 6 Buddhist patriarchs, relaying everything he saw and heard to them. Buddha guarding heart and the other Buddhist patriarchs were overjoyed. Now that Buddhism and Taoism had both suffered heavy losses, they knew that the Buddhist supremacies and ancient Buddhas could at most fight the Taoism's sect masters to a draw. In order to defeat Taoism and gain the upper hand, Buddhism needed a powerful figure. Supremacy, be it his background, his temperament, or his methods, was perfect for the Buddhist ancestors' needs. In a situation where Tao-fusing sages couldn't make a move, Supremacy might be the Buddhist patriarch's trump card. He was the key to the Buddhist patriarchs and Taoism's godly investiture plan. The Buddhist patriarchs knew very well how tough the primordial divine Vajra wood was. It was a divine item with absolute toughness. They knew very well how powerful the boundless lightning slaughtering in the chaos was. Even the Buddhist patriarchs didn't dare to move recklessly in the boundless lightning slaughtering. The fact that the main body of the Vajra wood could last 36,000 years in the boundless lightning slaughtering before its main body was split in half showed how strong it was. The Buddhist patriarchs' divine senses quickly exchanged their opinions. Massive amounts of Buddhism power were infused into Buddha guarding will's body, and through the Buddha guarding will's enlightenment technique, the power was bestowed onto Supremacy. Originally, Buddha guarding will was prepared to give Supremacy 100 eons worth of Buddhism power. But after a discussion, they each donated 200 eons worth of Buddhism power. This was enough to push Supremacy's cultivation base to the level of the strongest below Tao fusing realm. Even Wu Qi's main body wouldn't be a match for Supremacy. As he sensed the Buddhist energy surging violently in the Supremacy's body, a shameless thing happened with a thought in Wu Qi's mind. The Vajra dragon-taming wood in Yuan Ling's nether realm, which had its energy essence devoured by Supremacy, snapped with a boom. 2 broken tree trunks suddenly shot out from the top of Supremacy's head, smashing the imperial palace of New Wu and almost flattening the capital city. Had it not been for Buddha guarding will's quick action, the 2 huge tree trunks, tens of thousands of miles long and hundreds of miles thick, would have been enough to destroy all the villages and towns around the capital city. Buddha guarding will's eyes went wide. Beams of golden light shot out, transforming into a golden lotus that lifted up the indescribably heavy Vajra dragon-taming wood. The 7 Buddhist patriarchs, whose divine senses were connected as one, exclaimed in unison, "The main body of the Vajra dragon-taming wood? Wonderful, wonderful! His divine soul has reincarnated, and his main body has also entered the transmigration. This is his great fortune." If these 2 tree trunks can be refined into a magical artifact of the Buddhist League, it will be the most convenient weapon for Supremacy. Using the Vajra dragon-taming wood to forge a divine weapon, and having a telepathic connection with Supremacy, it was the prime divine weapon of Supremacy. Moreover, the Vajra dragon-taming wood was so strong that any supreme treasure of primal would be smashed in half when it was forged into a weapon. That was where the problem lay. How much effort and time would it take to forge such a strong Vajra dragon-taming wood? With a wry smile, Buddha Guarding will heaved a long sigh and said, "This is a great opportunity for the Buddhist League to prosper. It's just a matter of time and energy, which we have the least shortage of now." The other 6 Buddhas smiled wryly as well. Buddha Guarding Heart shouted, "If that's the case, let's work together to forge a weapon the likes of which Buddhism has never seen before. Hee, those 9 cow-noses have spent so many years of hard work just to forge a investiture of the gods, yet they are still so proud of themselves, thinking that it is the best magical artifact in the world. Let's show them the treasure we've forged for supremacy. Supremacy, who had been digesting the Buddhist energy in his body with all his strength, opened his eyes and cried out in a low voice, "Buddhist patriarchs, please listen to me. This Vajra dragon-taming wood is my body from my previous life. If it was forged by someone else, it would naturally be too strong and hard to refine. But as long as you can provide me with the Buddhist energy and transform it into the divine flame of Buddhism, I will be able to forge it into a divine weapon within a short period of time." Buddha Guarding will slapped his forehead as if he was enlightened. "I've made a mistake. You, the master, are right here. The Vajra dragon-taming wood is indeed strong, but you are the reincarnation of its divine soul. Naturally, you can make it hard and soft as you want it to be. In 3 to 5 years, the treasure will be completed. It's just a little more Buddhist energy, but what's the point?" They had been cultivating for countless years since the creation of Pangu world. To the 7 Buddhist patriarchs, magic energy was nothing. They had an inexhaustible supply of Buddhist energy to spend. As long as they could forge a powerful guardian Vajra for the Buddhist League, a little bit of Buddhist energy was nothing. It was as if the 7 Buddhist patriarchs could already see the scene of the great supremacy wielding the divine weapon forged from the Vajra dragon-taming wood, sending the bulls' noses scurrying in all directions. They burst out laughing in unison. Buddha Guarding will waved his hand and cast a time restriction that covered an area of 10 miles in circumference. Inside the restriction, the 7 Buddhist patriarchs worked together and sped up the flow of time by tens of millions of times. 2 hours in the outside world was 2,000 years inside the restriction. Inside the time restriction, the Buddhas took out some of their most precious materials. Together with 2 Vajra dragon-taming wood trunks, they forged a Vajra scepter and a protective 7 treasures kasaya for supremacy. The Vajra scepter was densely packed with innumerable Buddhist Dharma seals, and the 7 treasures kasaya was stacked with countless treasures. Not to mention the other treasures, just the materials used to craft these 2 treasures were at least equivalent to the price of several dozen grand mist artifacts. Apart from using the divine flame of Buddhism to refine the scepter and the kasaya, the 7 Buddhist patriarchs also taught supremacy all their abilities and secret arts. This was the first time they taught someone together. 3 days and 3 nights had passed in the outside world, but tens of thousands of years had passed inside the restriction. Wu Qi had been sitting cross-legged on top of the mountain, quietly comprehending the enlightenment the 7 Buddhist patriarchs had given him. "Generous, too generous, too generous," murmured Wu Qi as he comprehended the benefits he had received. The 7 Buddhist patriarchs were so generous that Wu Qi felt a little embarrassed. Perhaps supremacy was really going to cooperate with the Buddhist League and teach the Tao League a good lesson? Just as Supremacy Day put on his 7 treasures kasaya and walked out of the restrictive spell with the Vajra scepter in his hand, Wu Qi suddenly frowned and looked up into the sky. 6 great celestial emperors, where are you going? Chapter 1066. Amidst the boundless white clouds, countless huge cloud vortexes were spinning silently and rapidly. The 6 great celestial emperors were moving carefully at the edge of these vortexes. Wagging his tail excitedly, Nine Tails kept asking Wu Qi with his divine sense if he could catch 2 great celestial emperors and eat them. After following the trail for 2 days and 2 nights along the edge of the vortexes, there was finally a bright light ahead. Oblivious to the fact that one of these heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals whom he wanted to train had revealed his whereabouts, Ziwei Lingying stepped on a breeze and flew into the depths of the white clouds with the other 5 great celestial emperors. It was such a wonderful place that allowed Meng Xiaobai and the other heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals to avoid the calamity of the fiend gods, and allowed the 6 great celestial emperors to hide some things that they could not reveal to the public. Back when they were on Myriad Immortals' planet, Nye Yaonu was full of resentment towards Great Yan's imperial family. Therefore, when the 6 dynasties left Myriad Immortals' planet, she immediately took her son and went into secluded cultivation, no longer bothering herself with the affairs of Great Yan. Later on, when Wu Qi lifted the restrictive spell in the bloodline of Great Yan's imperial family, allowing the descendants of the 6 dynasties to regain their freedom, Nye Yaonu immediately went into secluded cultivation with Nye Baihong. With Wu Qi's help, both mother and son successfully transcended their heavenly tribulation and ascended. Clad in a bright silver armor, the tall and muscular Meng Xiaobai was also among the group of heavenly generals. Under the command of the heavenly lords and immortal officials from the pill department of the celestial court, groups of female immortals were harvesting spirit herbs produced from various spirit trees in Yugarden. Nye Yaonu, who had white hair and a beautiful face, was among these immortals, carefully harvesting the tiny flowers of a purple leaf Ganoderma duda. The Ganoderma duda looked like a monk sitting cross-legged on a lotus throne with a fist-sized Ganoderma duda, emanating an intoxicating fragrance. It was an ingredient added to the cure wound medicine concocted by the celestial court. Out of 10,000 pills of cure wound medicine, a small petal of this Ganoderma duda could increase its efficacy by 60%. Ninetails was a predator among the Chaos Fiend gods. If the world of Chaos Fiend gods was compared to a huge ecological chain, it was equivalent to a wolf or a tiger in the food chain. It was born with all kinds of divine abilities to hunt and devour other living beings. Even from a great distance, it could smell the sweet, plump aroma of the 6 great celestial emperors. Panting and spitting saliva all the way, it happily carried the 3 of them to a place less than 100 miles behind the 6 great celestial emperors. When Nye Yaonu saw the 6 great celestial emperors coming out together in Yugarden today, she felt nervous and panicked, but she also recalled what Wu Qi had told her before he sent her and her son away. Wu Qi had single-handedly helped them transcend the heavenly tribulation and ascend to the immortal realm. At the same time, he had taught them 3 extremely profound cultivation techniques. As long as they cultivated according to them, they would be able to become primordial immortals in the future. They were the supreme cultivation techniques that could lead them straight to the realm of Tao reasoning. The closer they got to the core of the ocean of clouds, the denser the cloud vortexes became. In the end, as long as they practiced according to the laws, they would be able to step into the realm of primordial immortal in the future. The closer they got to the core of the ocean of clouds, the denser the cloud vortexes became. In the end, the cloud vortexes were one after another, and the 6 great celestial emperors had no choice but to carefully sneak past them from the edge. At this point, their flying speed had also slowed down. They could only move forward cautiously with small steps. They could no longer fly as fast as they did before. It had only been a few years since Meng Xiaobai and his clan members ascended to the celestial court. But, relying on the vast immortal energy in the celestial court, the magical cultivation technique taught by Wu Qi, and his excellent aptitude, his fleshly body cultivation base had reached the realm of 18th tier heaven immortal in just a few years. In the celestial court, such a frightening cultivation speed could only be possessed by those with excellent aptitudes. In just a short while, Meng Xiaobai had become a hot steamed bun in the eyes of some high-ranking officials of the celestial court. Without batting an eyelid, Nye Yaonu gently pressed her finger on an inconspicuous pearl hanging on her waist. Everything she saw was imprinted in the pearl, and Wu Qi, who was far away on Pangu continent, saw everything she saw immediately. On top of that, it was a very safe place. Even when the celestial fiends from the outer domains attacked the 33 heavens not long ago, they could not find their way here. Meng Xiaobai and the group of Meng clan members under his command watched the terrible scene of the celestial fiends wreaking havoc. After that, the sect masters of the 33 heavens personally drove the celestial fiends out of the 33 heavens, restoring the peace and quiet of the celestial court. This mystic realm was in the middle of nowhere. Meng Xiaobai had been stationed here for a few years, but no one knew what he was guarding. But the salary for being stationed here was generous, and the immortal energy in this void was thousands of times stronger than that in other places in the celestial court. Meng Xiaobai's cultivation base had improved greatly after being stationed here for a few years. The 6 great celestial emperors did not know that someone had revealed their whereabouts. They walked silently through Yu Garden, then strolled into a seemingly inconspicuous tunnel among the dozens of tunnels behind the garden. After strolling a few rounds in the tunnel, the place in front of them suddenly opened up. The sky was filled with white clouds, and standing on top of each cloud were hundreds of heavenly soldiers and generals. The place was filled with thin layers of newborn white clouds, each of which contained an enormous amount of natural energy, which was almost equal to the total magic power and cultivation base of a top-tier heaven immortal. Wu Qi fell in love with this place as soon as he saw it. What he lacked now was magic power and cultivation base. He did not have the time to devour the cultivation bases of the few revered ones, the ancient Buddhas, and the Buddhas, and he could not devour all the Buddhist saints in the temple, for he was short of magic power at the moment. Ziwei Lingying snorted softly. He glanced around and saw that all the heavenly soldiers and generals were as respectful as ever. He could not help but sigh inwardly. In the celestial court, only these low-ranked heavenly soldiers and generals with low cultivation bases could be trusted. As for the other gold immortals and primordial immortals, which one of them could he really order around? In the future, he would have to select more talents from these low-ranked heavenly soldiers and generals and train them well. It was not until he arrived at the celestial court that he realized that the celestial court was not as peaceful and blessed as those immortals claimed. All the male immortals who had just ascended to the celestial court were either assigned to be ordinary immortal soldiers or sent to serve as servants in the mansions of various immortal officials. As for the female immortals who were beautiful and virgins, they were either sent to the great celestial emperor's palace as palace maids, or taken away by those lofty celestial lords and immortal kings. They flew on for several hours, carefully avoiding some turbulent vortexes in the white clouds. Ziwei Lingying and the others were very careful, because these turbulent vortexes did not have much damage to the immortal bodies and avatars of the immortals, but they were extremely destructive to their divine souls and nascent divinities. Even primordial immortals had to turn into gold immortals and escape when they were sucked into them. Bright white light shone from all directions, illuminating a cloud cave that measured hundreds of millions of miles in diameter. Nie Yaonu and her son had ascended at the same time, and she had a strange appearance, such as white-haired and red-faced, which allowed her to avoid some unpleasant encounters. She was assigned to the group of female immortals who worked for the pill department of the celestial court and became the lowest-ranking immortal on duty. When Wu Qi saw that both Lord Zhua and Supremacy had obtained the expected benefits, and when he noticed the strange movements of the 6 great celestial emperors from Nie Yaonu and Meng Xiaobai's reports, he immediately brought Ao Buzan and Qixia, mounted the 9-tailed scorpion, and flew straight into the 33 heavens. They flew forward for millions of miles, and everywhere they passed was a vast expanse of white clouds. These clouds were magical creatures produced by the heaven and earth, capable of absorbing divine sense and shielding divine will. They could be considered as an extremely mysterious natural realm of the celestial court. This vast expanse of white clouds measured tens of billions of miles in circumference. Even if an almighty expert of Tao-fusing realm entered this place, his divine sense could only cover an area of millions of miles. Therefore, no one in Pangu world could really see what was hiding in this place with just one glance. Before they knew it, they had been followed by someone. Just like Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong, Meng Xiaobai and many other people from Meng village had been helped by Wu Qi to ascend to the immortal realm. For the sake of Meng Xiaobai and his people, Wu Qi had even spent a great deal of effort to alter the true body of heaven and earth scripture, turning it into a cultivation technique that cultivated both the nascent divinity and the fleshly body at the same time. Although it was not as fast as the true body of heaven and earth scripture, It was 100 times more convenient than ordinary body tempering techniques. Suddenly, the white clouds in front of them parted, and 6 great celestial emperors walked in together. Meng Xiaobai and his people dared not to be negligent, and hastily dropped to their knees and bowed deeply to the 6 great celestial emperors. Subconsciously, Meng Xiaobai pressed his finger on a pearl inlaid on his belt. Immediately, every movement of the 6 great celestial emperors was reflected in the pearl, and Wu Qi could see their movements at the same time. The 6 great celestial emperors walked out of the translucent palace like thieves. Without looking sideways, they walked along a path paved with green jade behind the palace, all the way into the Yu Garden of the 33 heavens of the celestial court behind the translucent palace, which was famous for its abundance of spirit trees. At the same time, because this was the back garden of the celestial court, there was nothing here except for the vast expanse of white clouds. Apart from those who purposely wanted to make things difficult for the 6 great celestial emperors, who would come here for no reason, even the 9 Daozu celestial emperors would not pay attention to the movements here at all times. Nie Yaonu was collecting flower petals when she suddenly saw the 6 great celestial emperors walking out together. Her heart trembled, and she hurriedly dropped to her knees like the other female immortals around her, not daring to raise her head to look at the 6 great celestial emperors. With Wu Qi's current cultivation base, and the various escape arts he learned in the Scroll of Stealing, which were the ultimate means for him to hide and protect himself, how could anyone discover his tracks along the way? Even the Daozu celestial patriarch Buddha could not easily discover Wu Qi's tracks, let alone these civil and military officials of the celestial court. Therefore, Meng Xiaobai brought a guard of 8,000 heavenly soldiers, and together with the other 17 heavenly generals and over 100,000 heavenly soldiers, they were stationed here. Catch 2 great celestial emperors and eat them for fun? Why did this sentence sound so strange? Twitching his mouth, Wu Qi ignored Nine-Tailed's request. Instead, he carefully controlled Nine-Tailed to approach the 6 great celestial emperors. At present, Tao League and Buddhist League were fighting fiercely against each other, and the celestial court was facing the threat of celestial fiends from outer heavenly realms. Yet, the 6 great celestial emperors had left the celestial court at the same time and sneaked into this unknown white cloud. Just as Wu Qi was happily studying the cloud cave, a violent roar suddenly came from the front. Nie Yaonu was a woman who could clearly distinguish between kindness and hatred. She knew that she and her son owed Wu Qi too much. Chapter 1067. Wu Qi was shocked when he sensed the countless white clouds in the cloud cave, which contained an enormous amount of spiritual energy. What kind of place was this? Every thin and inconspicuous cloud contained an energy equivalent to the cultivation base of a top-notch heaven immortal, and there were trillions of clouds here. Not only that, but there was also an invisible breeze swirling back and forth. If the breeze blew on a person's body, it would feel as if countless soft hands were kneading his body, giving him an indescribably comfortable feeling. A subtle cool breeze seeped into his body through his skin and circulated in his meridians, faintly helping to suppress his inner demons and improve his mental cultivation base. The cool breeze contained a very strong aura of life, and there were invisible gusts of wind rolling around his body. Although he had been standing here for a while, he could feel that the strength of his fleshly body, which was already extremely strong, had been improved to a certain extent. Wu Qi could not help but be aghast. What was this place? How could it have such a miraculous effect? Wu Qi reckoned that this was a miraculous place that was absolutely no weaker than his Yuanling's nether realm. If he could make good use of all the strange things here, he might be able to produce an existence at the peak of the Tao-breaking realm in just a few periods. But judging from the appearance of the 6 great celestial emperors, they did not seem to be able to sense the enormous amount of spiritual energy contained in these white clouds, nor could they sense the gentle breeze around them. What was the reason for this? The sudden roar startled Wu Qi, who was immersed in some indescribable state, and at the same time, he felt annoyed. Just now, when he spread out his divine sense, he vaguely sensed some extremely secret information contained in this cloud cave. Just when Wu Qi was about to get to the bottom of this information, the roar, which contained boundless hatred and ruthlessness, suddenly came rushing over and forcibly knocked Wu Qi out of that mysterious state. Damn it! Wu Qi could not help but feel a little flustered and exasperated. Yi Xia looked excitedly at Wu Qi, her eyes flashing with a halo of destruction that looked like two black holes. "Are you angry, demon monarch?" she cried in a low voice. "It must be the 6 of them who made you unhappy. Why don't you capture them and slowly cut them up? As for the great celestial emperor? Just the thought of being able to kill the great celestial emperor was enough to make one happy. I really want to see what color their blood is." QB also shook his body excitedly, opening his complicated mouth and spitting out a lot of saliva. He had been eyeing the 6 great celestial emperors for a long time. As great celestial emperors, they did not have the aura of Renhuang in their bodies, but they had the imperial aura of the heavenly emperor, which was in line with the law of the Great Path. This kind of breath was extremely tempting to a different type of predator like Nine-Tailed. It was equivalent to putting a big rib in front of the nose of a vicious dog. If it wasn't for Wu Qi's control, Nine-Tailed would have rushed out to hunt. Wu Qi narrowed his eyes and murmured in a low voice, "Don't worry. They came here to court death and they asked for it." Once he squeezed out all the valuables from them, he would have them make a trip to the divine seal decree. Let's see if the Daozu will confer them the title of Celestial Emperor again. With a few strange laughs, Wu Qi deliberately threw this problem to the Daozu. In the past, when the celestial emperors fell in the apocalypse of heaven and earth, their souls were destroyed, and a new celestial emperor would be set up. But this time, Wu Qi killed 6 celestial emperors and sent Yuan Ling to the divine seal decree. Would the Daozu confer them the title of Celestial Emperor again, or would they choose someone else? It would be fine if they were conferred the title of Celestial Emperor, but there would certainly be people in the Dao sect who would question in their hearts, 6 dead people, do you still want to occupy the position of Celestial Emperor? If they were not conferred the title of Celestial Emperor, then there would certainly be people in the Dao sect who would sympathize with the death of the rabbit. They were the 6 great celestial emperors. Could you confer them the title of Earth God of the new celestial court? In any case, this would make the 9 Daozu look bad and bring them great trouble. Only by constantly making trouble for the Daozu and the Buddhas could Wu Qi have enough time to strengthen himself and develop himself. Only in this way could he set up more chess pieces and obtain the greatest benefit in this great calamity. With a cold gleam as sharp as a knife shooting out of his eyes, Wu Qi stared at the backs of the 6 great celestial emperors, then patted Nine-Tailed on the head and motioned for him to keep flying forward. Following the footsteps of the great celestial emperor, they went deeper and deeper into the cloud cave, and finally came to a pair of peaks in the center. The peaks were jade white in color and strangely shaped, looking like 2 human lungs. A dark purple ridge connected them at the top, which was also shaped like a human trachea. The white peaks measured hundreds of thousands of miles in circumference, and were densely covered with countless pores of various sizes, just like the alveoli of a human being. Countless runes were flashing in each of these pores, and at first glance, the dense runes gathered into a vast ocean, which made one's heart palpitate with fear. With so many runes gathered together, the power gathered was enough to instantly destroy an almighty expert at the peak of Dao-breaking realm. Even a Dao-fusing expert would be wounded if his Dharma body was crushed by this pair of peaks. The power possessed by this pair of peaks was no weaker than that of a Dao-fusing expert. At the sight of this pair of peaks, Wu Qi instinctively thought of the boundless spirit cave beneath Yuxiong Plain, which covered hundreds of billions of miles in circumference. Legend had it that the spirit cave in Yuxiong Plain was transformed from the heart of the great Saint Pangu. So, this must be Pangu's lungs? No wonder there was such a wonderful breeze here, which could help Wu Qi continue to improve the strength of his fleshly body. Every wisp of cloud and every breeze here contained the heavenly Tao comprehended by the great Saint Pangu, and the great Saint Pangu's heavenly Tao was the heavenly Tao of this world, and his will was the will of this world. Therefore, even though Wu Qi's fleshly body had been improved to a level 100 times stronger than it was in his previous life, he could still benefit from this inconspicuous breeze. Of course, Only someone at Wu Qi's level, or even a fiend god from chaos like him, could benefit from it. At least, it seemed that the 6 great celestial emperors did not notice anything mysterious about this place. They just thought it was an ordinary arcane realm formed by heaven and earth. Judging from their expressions, they did not even notice the mystery of the pair of peaks in front of them. After pondering for a moment, Wu Qi asked in a low voice, "What do you think these 2 mountains look like?" Ninetails did not answer. He did not take these 2 mountains seriously at all. But Ao Buzan and Yi Xia's answers made Wu Qi realize something. To them, these 2 mountains were just 2 ordinary white peaks, and it did not seem like Wu Qi could see their true appearance at all. Wu Qi immediately understood that his primal Dharma eyes possessed an unfathomable magical power, and it was he who had seen through the true nature of these 2 mountains. Even Ao Buzan, Yi Xia, and Ninetails, who were in the realm of Tao breaking, could not see through the true appearance of these mountains, let alone the 6 great celestial emperors, whose cultivation base had only reached the realm of Tao reasoning. Wu Qi nodded to himself as he saw the 6 great celestial emperors walk up to the top of the mountain. After performing a spell, countless white lightning bolts came whistling down from the void, and dozens of thick iron chains emerged out of thin air. At the center of the purple-gold chains, which shaped like a spider web, was a giant figure, hundreds of feet tall, whose bones were pierced by the chains, and whose grayish-black blood kept gushing out of his broken body. The giant was roughly humanoid, but with 3 heads and 6 arms, he did not look like a normal person at all. In particular, in addition to the faces on each of his 3 heads, there was a huge, ferocious, and terrifying face on his chest. The big face on his chest occasionally opened its mouth and roared, which was the roar that Wu Qi and the others had heard, full of murderous intent and tyrannical aura. The giant seemed to have no skin, only exposed crimson muscles wrapped in a layer of viscous black and red fluid. Thick blood vessels wriggled over the exposed muscles, and blood flowed wildly in them, making loud splashing noises from time to time. His 3 heads looked like those of a bull, a bear, and a tiger, and had nothing to do with a human being. The pair of sharp black horns on the middle head was very eye-catching, with wisps of blood-red lightning flashing back and forth between them. As soon as he saw the 6 great celestial emperors, the giant immediately threw his head back and roared. Suddenly, the 2 black horns shone with a blinding light, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts, each as thick as a finger, shot wildly toward the 6 great celestial emperors. "Do you really want to die, Wu Chang?" Great celestial Emperor Zui Lingying sneered. A beam of white light shot out from between his brows, transforming into a mirror that matched the positions of the 12 zodiac signs in front of him, blocking the incoming red lightning bolts. Behind him, the Northern Emperor snorted coldly and raised his hand. A black scimitar flew out, transforming into countless black butterflies that fell on Wu Chang's body. Wherever the butterflies passed, Wu Chang's muscles and bones were cut open by the extremely sharp aura. For a moment, his blood was boiling, and the sound of his bones and muscles being torn was nauseating. But, although Wu Chang's body was not very strong, he had an extraordinary ability of recovery. No matter how the butterflies damaged his body, in just a few breaths of time, he was as good as new. The crimson lightning bolts were still shooting toward him. Wu Chang took a deep breath, then the big face on his chest opened its mouth and let out a venomous roar. "If I can get out of here, I will slaughter the entire celestial court, kill all living beings, and achieve my supreme Tao." Great celestial Emperor Zui Lingying smiled faintly, clasped his hands behind his back, and said in a cold voice, "We are here to free you, Wu Chang." Wu Chang was stunned. He tilted his head and looked at the 6 great celestial emperors, and the lightning bolts that were shooting out came to an abrupt stop. After a long time, he asked in a hoarse voice, "Why do you want to free me? Didn't you, the celestial court, go through so much trouble to capture me and force me to tell you?" "Hee, I won't tell you." Northern Emperor Ziwei snorted coldly and pointed a finger at Wu Chang. A black butterfly swept across his neck, and his 3 heads rolled and fell to the ground. Before long, they turned into black juice and flowed all over the ground. But the flesh on his neck squirmed, and 3 new heads grew out in a very short time. Great Celestial Emperor Zui Linging snorted coldly and said, "So what if you have an immortal body? If you can't free yourself, you are just a good-for-nothing here. Wu Chang, listen to us. As long as you agree to our conditions, why can't we work together?" Wu Chang was silent for a long time, and then he cried out in a low voice, "Unless you give up that thing." Great Celestial Emperor Zui Linging laughed, then sighed and said, "We already have the cultivation base of an immortal body, so why should we covet your immortality herb? Your enemy is Wu Xian, who is also a leader of the forbidden clans, and not us." The South Emperor laughed as well. "Wu Chang, it was not us who imprisoned you here back then. If you want to settle the score with someone, you can't blame it on us. 99% of those who cooperated with Wu Xian to imprison you are now dead, and it makes no sense for you to still hold a grudge against the Celestial Court." Wu Chang gave a strange laugh and murmured, "Tell me, what are your conditions?" Wu Qi furrowed his brows. "Elixir of immortality? Is Wu Chang really indestructible?" Chapter 1068. The sky was overcast, the ground was overcast, and the mountains and rivers were overcast. Even the air and the clouds were overcast. This was the place where the forbidden kind lived, a place specially created by the celestial court for these non-humankind beings, who were not accepted by the humankind. Originally, this place was a beautiful place with abundant spiritual energy. However, ever since the forbidden clan moved in, it had become this strange in just a few years. The flowers in this damned place were not fragrant, and the birds were silent. Even the birds and beasts were like dead creatures that rarely moved for several months. There were flowers and trees that had pulled out their roots and ran around everywhere. There were huge rocks and rocks that opened their mouths and swallowed the soil and stones around them. Sometimes, the river here would surge with blood-red waves and swallow the creatures by the river. Sometimes, when the creatures were resting on the mountain peaks, a huge crack would suddenly appear and swallow them. This was a place where all living beings devoured each other. It was a giant basin, a dark hell that ordinary gods, saints, immortals, human beings, and even spirit creatures could not imagine. It was a place where all the ugly things in the world were gathered. Treacherous, cruel, tyrannical, obscene, all the unkind and evil things lived freely in this place. Evildoers who were expelled by all living beings in Pangu world could find absolute freedom in this place. As long as one had enough power, as long as one could obey the supreme order of Wu Xian, one could live as he or she wished in this place. In the center of this dusky world, on a mountain that looked like a huge human spine, a group of temples built with gray stones stood impressively. This mountain had a radius of 1,000 miles, and was tens of thousands of miles tall. Gray thunderstorms coiled around this mountain, striking at it like raging dragons and stirring up dazzling thunderbolts on its surface. The mountain was densely covered in well-proportioned caves. Before the doors of these caves hung eye-catching plaques, with some words written on them. Occasionally, all kinds of oddly shaped creatures would sneakily come to a cave abode and offer some of the rare items written on the plaque, such as spirit medicines and spirit herbs, in exchange for some even stranger items. Every strange creature that successfully completed the exchange left the mountain in great joy. Clearly, they had obtained quite a lot of benefits. The gray temple on the top of the mountain was so large that it almost occupied the entire mountaintop. Every hall in the temple was thousands of feet tall. Judging from the scale of the halls, it was clear that they were not built for ordinary people. Clearly, they were built for some gigantic creatures. In the center of the temple, in a hall that measured 100 miles in both width and length, Wu Xian, who looked like a pile of mud and had countless twitching faces, was lying lazily on the floor. In the middle of his body was a strong and handsome man. His feet had fused with Wu Xian's body, and he was attacking a beautiful fairy who was screaming and crying like a storm. The female immortal was probably a peak-level heaven immortal, only one step away from becoming a gold immortal. Her fair and slender body was tightly gripped by the strong man, and no matter how hard she struggled, she could not break free from his strong body. Laughing strangely, the man kept sprinting madly, blood spraying out of the joint between their bodies. Suddenly, the man's body twitched violently, and a great amount of sticky, grayish-black liquid sprayed out of his mouth. The female immortal let out a hoarse howl of despair as her body began to melt rapidly from her lower abdomen, turning into a pool of pus and blood in the blink of an eye. The man gave a smug, hideous laugh. He twisted his neck and made a cracking sound as his joints rubbed against each other. Then, his body melted like mud and slowly merged with the huge body of Wu Xian down below. The man was just a clone of Wu Xian formed with evil magic, a little trick he used to amuse himself in his spare time. In front of Wu Xian was a large chair carved with dragons and phoenixes, with a tea table and a long table on both sides, on which were placed fragrant tea, fresh fruits, and snacks. Clad in a green Taoist robe and shrouded in an immortal aura, Lu Bang sat upright on the chair, looking at the pool of pus and blood on Wu Xian's body with a playful look. Wu Xian gently wriggled his huge body, which measured 100 miles in circumference, then said in a hoarse, deep voice, "Occasionally getting close to a woman can help me relax. It's just that there are many things going on in the celestial court recently, and it's rare to find a beautiful female immortal who is a virgin. Otherwise, it would not have been just a woman just now. With my divine power, it's nothing unusual for me to have sex with 3,000 female immortals." Lu Bang applauded softly and said with a smile, "Your Excellency Wu Xian is still as awe-inspiring as ever. Hey, but where in the celestial court are there so many beautiful virgin immortals for Your Excellency Wu Xian to enjoy? When it comes to the number of beautiful women, we have to mention the human race. How many beautiful women are there in you? The number of beautiful women among them is many times more than the number of stars in the sky." Wu Xian wriggled his body, and a pair of huge eyes suddenly opened on the part of his body that was facing Lu Bang. Staring at Lu Bang with those gray, cold, and merciless eyes, Wu Xian said in a cold voice, "That clone of yours has just abdicated the throne, and he might even be able to ascend to the throne in the future. You are not a virtuous son of heaven with a pure heart and few desires, but 100 times more lecherous than me. Are you really willing to let me kill those beautiful women of the human race?" Lu Bang crossed his legs and snorted. "Of course not, but it's not a problem for me to send you a few beautiful women every once in a while." Waving his hand, Lu Bang said with a smile, "Why are you talking about this? They are just some playthings. What's there to fuss about? Let's get down to business." Wu Xian wriggled his body and yawned slowly. "What business can I have? In any case, let me make it clear first. I don't do things that bring me no benefits, I don't do things that are too dangerous, and I don't do things that will provoke some powerful people." Lu Bang sneered and said mockingly, "That's why you were born to hide in this turtle cave and never come out. Wu Xian, you might as well change your name to Wu Gui. Didn't you leave behind a clan of descendants when you were still a human? There are a few beautiful women among them. Let me enjoy them." Wu Xian's cold, merciless eyes suddenly turned scarlet as he snapped, "Are you courting death?" A deafening rumble rang out as plumes of poisonous gas kept spewing out of his body, while thousands of black tentacles shot out of his body and stabbed at Lu Bang. But a glistening green lotus-shaped halo spread out from between Lu Bang's brows, firmly blocking the poisonous gas and the tentacles, turning them all into nothingness. When the green light shone on Wu Xian's body, he looked like dew under the scorching sun, constantly spewing out thick black mist. Large patches of abscesses and blisters kept growing on his body, and a pungent stench filled the entire hall. Lu Bang gently clapped his hands. Countless fist-sized green lotus-shaped halos drifted out of his body and lightly imprinted on Wu Xian's body. Wu Xian howled at the top of his lungs. His body squirmed violently, and each of the lotus-shaped halos burned a huge wound 1,000 feet in diameter on his skin. As the light bloomed, Wu Xian's flesh and blood were completely annihilated. "I've kept a low profile for so many years, cultivating the innate divine light of separation and reunion with the help of this green lotus of purification. Today, I've finally succeeded, and I've come here to thank you, Your Excellency. Don't let me kill you so easily, or I'll be very dissatisfied." Lu Bang murmured in a low voice, Once I'm dissatisfied, your entire clan will be executed. There are many beautiful women among your juniors, but I don't care about their status as seniors or juniors. I'll take them all into my room. Wu Xian, you can't die. A gust of green gas blew out of his mouth. Wherever it passed, a small part of Wu Xian's body suddenly turned into ashes and drifted away. All his life force was wiped out by the green gas. Wu Xian let out a terrified roar and howled hoarsely, the innate divine light of separation and reunion. What the hell is that? O King of No, Your Majesty, for the sake that it was Wu Xian who split your nascent divinity into 9 incarnations for you. Lu Bang chuckled and retracted his divine power. Crossing his legs, Lu Bang picked up a teacup and took a sip of fragrant tea. In fact, we're old friends, he said coolly, and we share the same interests, so I shouldn't have mistreated you like this. But in the future, I'll be the master and you'll be the slave. We need to figure out the difference between us. So, you must be clear about one thing: I can kill you at any time. The sound of heavy footsteps rang out as dozens of burly men clad in heavy armors slowly walked into the temple. They were roughly humanoid, but had the heads of various ferocious birds and beasts, and their bodies had all kinds of signs of beastification. These men were the generals and leaders of the forbidden clans, and they were Wu Xian's greatest help in controlling the forbidden clans. But, under Wu Xian's horrified gaze when they walked into the temple, they dropped to their knees, kowtowed to Lu Bang, and cried out in unison, "May your majesty live forever." They did not even look at Wu Xian, as if Wu Xian, who was badly wounded and bleeding profusely, did not exist at all. "Don't be surprised," Lu Bang said coolly with a teacup in his hand. "I'm not willing to be a chess piece, and I want to be a chess player. Naturally, I need to cultivate more chess pieces. As for these subordinates of yours, glory and wealth can always buy people over." Wu Xian fell silent as he stared at Lu Bang in horror. This was the most inconspicuous son of the South Dipper Emperor, and he was once just an experiment subject used by Wu Xian to experiment with the soul-splitting curse. Moreover, it was Lu Bang who had spent a great deal of money and gifts to make Wu Xian use him as an experiment subject. The scene of Lu Bang howling, struggling, and weeping in his hands that day when he could not put up any resistance was still vivid in his mind. But how long had it been? It was probably less than 1 eon. How could Lu Bang possess such overwhelming power? The green lotus of purification and the innate divine light of separation and reunion. Wu Xian branded these 2 names deeply in his heart. Waving his sleeve lightly, Lu Bang said coolly, "I'm destined to become the human emperor, but there are still some key points. I need elite soldiers and valiant generals to fight for me. The forbidden clans will choose those who still have a human form, as well as those strange creatures you've created over the years. As long as they still have a human appearance, they will follow me into battle." With a grim laugh, Lu Bang stared at Wu Xian and said, "The 6 great celestial emperors have gone to a secret realm in the celestial court, where Wu Chang is imprisoned. Wu Xian, you should know what this means. You and Wu Chang are good brothers who have gone through life and death together and can entrust their wives to you." Slowly rising to his feet, Lu Bang turned and walked toward the exit of the temple without saying a word. After a long silence, Wu Xian finally said with a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, I, Wu Xian, am willing to serve you." Chapter 1069. In the boundless cloud cave, 6 great celestial emperors surrounded Wu Chang, who was roaring at the top of his voice. Just now, Ziwei Linging was about to convince Wu Chang, but when he mentioned the emperor of the celestial court, who had imprisoned Wu Chang here many generations ago, Wu Chang suddenly broke out, shouting and cursing at the top of his voice and uttering countless vicious curses. These were not empty curses. Every curse he uttered turned into thick black smoke, condensing into fist-sized black runes that flew all over the sky. The lethality of these curses, which had materialized, was astonishing. Each curse contained boundless evil and malice. The ghostly wails and wolf howls shook the heavens and the earth, and there was also a strange, pungent smell that assaulted the nostrils. The thick smell was so strange that Xia almost threw up when she smelled it. Wu Qi unleashed a beam of Buddhist light that enveloped Xia, isolating the stench from the black runes. Aobuzan gave Xia a secretive look and murmured in a low voice, "This woman is really troublesome when she has a big belly. She can't eat or drink, and she vomits all day long, losing her temper and beating her husband all the time. If it were not for the fact that Lao Tzu has a strong body, he would have been tortured to death by them." Xia gave Aobuzan a sidelong glance with her eyes narrowed. Immediately, Aobuzan straightened his face and looked obediently in Wu Chang's direction, not daring to say another word. Meanwhile, Wu Qi gently rubbed Xia's head and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. Both Xia and Princess Zhanglu were pregnant, which was a big worry for Wu Qi. Suddenly, he regretted bringing Xia to this damned place. If the smell of Wu Chang's curse contained something bad and affected the child in Xia's belly, what should he do? But Xia and Wu Qi's child was born with the body of a sky fiend, so it should not be easily hurt, right? At the thought of the child in Xia's belly, Wu Qi felt a surge of anger in his heart. Why are you cursing people for no reason? It's fine if you curse a few celestial emperors, but you've provoked me. No matter what kind of immortal body you have, I'll tear you to pieces. As for the 6 great celestial emperors, they had provoked Wu Chang's anger and caused him to curse at random, which was likely to affect Wu Qi's children. They were destined to die a horrible death, and now, they had to die a more painful death. Narrowing his eyes, Wu Qi's pupils shone with an evil gleam. He was about to order Ninetails to pounce out, capture the 6 great celestial emperors, and give Wu Chang a good treatment. But at that moment, Celestial Emperor Zhongji suddenly snapped, "Don't take the opportunity to make trouble, Wu Chang. What's the use of your curse on us? You have less than 1/100th of your cultivation base now. Do you really think you are still the Wu Chang who could seriously injure the 6 great celestial emperors? Cooperate with us, and we can preserve your bloodline. Otherwise, hee." Wu Chang's cursing stopped abruptly. He took a deep breath, inhaled the curse runes drifting in the air, and murmured in a hoarse voice, "Don't ever mention the name of that shameless man in front of me. If not for his temptation, how could I have betrayed the human race? If not for him colluding with Wu Xian to plot against me and seize my immortality herb, how could I have fallen to this state?" He laughed strangely, then said in a low voice, "You said, preserve my bloodline? Don't tell me I still have descendants left in this world?" The 6 great celestial emperors, who had laid out a formation to block Wu Chang's curse, exchanged a glance. Then, Great Celestial Emperor Zui Lingying said in a deep voice, "When you betrayed the human race, you had 3 sons and 3 daughters. 2 of them were devoured by Wu Xian, and the 3 daughters had their energy essence sucked dry and died. Only the youngest son was left. At that time, I was just an immortal on duty in Temple of Translucence, and my brothers were just ordinary immortals of the Celestial Court," said Great Celestial Emperor indifferently. "Wu Chang," said Great Celestial Emperor Dongji coolly, "I was just an immortal on duty in Temple of Translucence, and my brothers were just ordinary immortals of the Celestial Court." "Wu Chang, we should not be enemies," said Great Celestial Emperor Zui Lingying coolly. Wu Chang was silent for a long time. Then, the big face on his chest slowly opened its eyes and grinned strangely. "You've been scheming against me since a long time ago? If that's the case, you should have used my descendants as a bargaining chip to make a deal with me after you ascended to the throne of Great Celestial Emperor. Why did you only come to me today? It's been so many years, but you've only come to see me twice, haven't you? Why did you come to make a deal with me today?" Pondering for a short while before the 6 emperors could answer, Wu Chang murmured to himself, "I see. You are in trouble. Hee, do you need the power of the forbidden kind? If I can kill Wu Xian and help you with all the power of the forbidden kind, will you release me and let me get my descendants back?" Great Celestial Emperor Zui Lingying laughed happily. It was so easy to talk to smart people. They did want to borrow Wu Chang's power, and they did want to control the forbidden kind. The Zui Lingying Great Celestial Emperor and the others knew very well that the potential and current strength of the forbidden clans were beyond the imagination of ordinary people. These so-called forbidden beings were not only the taboo of the humankind, but also the taboo of all living beings in Pangu world. From the moment the forbidden kind abandoned their identities as human beings, they had violated the great Tao of Pangu world, and became forbidden beings that could not be tolerated by the great Tao of nature. They were like cancer cells in a normal person's body. They were extremely destructive to all other normal living tissues. Perhaps these cancer cells were still a little weak at the moment, but what if they had the full support of the 6 emperors? They were like cancer cells. If they could devour people at the level of the Tao ancestor and the Buddhist ancestor, everything would be perfect. Of course, the forbidden clans were dangerous, extremely dangerous. Therefore, the 6 great celestial emperors would carefully control them. Before Wu Chang made a sufficient oath to restrain himself, and before Wu Chang accepted the restriction the 6 great celestial emperors had placed in his body and soul, the 6 great celestial emperors would never release him. After a round of scheming and bargaining, Wu Chang, who was imprisoned here and could not move, could only yield to the various demands of the 6 great celestial emperors. He cracked his own body, exposing his internal organs and divine soul, allowing the 6 great heavenly emperors to cast complicated restrictive runes on his body and divine soul with the power of the 5 supreme treasures of Grand Mist. When everything was done, Ziwei Lingying gave Wu Chang, who was locked quietly in the middle of the chain, a complicated look, and pulled out a golden seal from under his sleeve, which had a few cracks on it. He injected a stream of immortal energy into the seal, and beams of golden light shot out and hit the chains that bound Wu Chang. The golden chains produced a deafening rumble, then broke with a crash, sending countless broken metal pieces flying all over the sky. Wu Qi and the others had enough cultivation bases, so when the chains broke, they saw a dark shadow flash across them. Wu Qi's heart skipped a beat. The aura of this shadow was exactly the same as the aura of Wu Xian, whom he had met the other day. Clearly, Wu Xian had cast his own seals in the chains when Wu Chang was imprisoned here. The chains were broken, and the seals were destroyed. Clearly, Wu Xian had discovered what was going on here. Interesting, this is really interesting. The Forbidden Clan. Wu Qi couldn't help but be tempted. If there was a way to control the Forbidden Clan, it would be more useful than the army of heavenly ghosts in his hands. After all, the curse of the Forbidden Clan, which almost killed anyone who touched it, had left a deep impression on Wu Qi. What did their curse consume? It was nothing more than treasures of heaven and earth. They used the spiritual energy contained in these treasures to construct a curse array, thereby unleashing a terrifying power that could kill people instantly. There were countless primordial divine trees in the nether realm of Wu Qi and Yuan Ling. As long as he was willing to damage some of the primordial divine tree's vital energy, he could take 3 to 5 tree trunks and make them into curse puppets. With that, apart from those existences of the Tao integration stage, who could not kill them? But how could he wrest control of the Forbidden Clan from the hands of Wu Chang and Wu Xian? Wu Qi fell into deep thought. Nine Tails bared his fangs and brandished his claws, wanting to pounce on 2 or 3 great celestial emperors to eat his fill. But Wu Qi smashed his fist on Nine Tails' head, forcibly dispelling the greedy appetite of this fellow who was a little short of brain juice. A deep laugh came from the big mouth on Wu Chang's chest. Wu Chang, who was hundreds of feet tall, slowly floated down from mid-air and stood firmly on the top of the mountain. He stretched his body with all his might, and his joints made a crisp, crackling sound. He laughed loudly and said, "After so many years, I can finally move my hands and feet." In the midst of his strange laughter, Wu Chang's body gradually shrank to the height of an ordinary person, which was about 10 feet tall. He shook his 3 heads and 6 arms, and suddenly, his figure flashed and appeared in front of the South Emperor. The South Emperor reacted very quickly. A dazzling red light burst out of his body and enveloped his whole body, and Wu Chang's fists had already smashed down like a storm. Every punch contained the vicious power of the curse, which made the South Emperor fly backward for hundreds of miles. The red light shield around him was almost shattered by Wu Chang's punch. The 6 great celestial emperors roared in unison. "Wu Chang, you're courting death." Ziwei Lingying roared. The 6 great celestial emperors raised their hands and were about to activate the restrictive spell that had just been sealed in Wu Chang's body to kill him. Wu Chang hurriedly raised his 6 thick arms and laughed. Wait. I'm just venting my anger. If the South Emperor had not schemed against me, how could Wu Xian have wrenched away the power of the Forbidden Clan? Hee, what a pity that this South Emperor is not the South Emperor I know. I'm not having a good time beating him up. With a gloomy face, the South Emperor flew back to the top of the mountain. Looking at Wu Chang, he sneered and said, "Don't go too far, Wu Chang. Otherwise, we can choose someone else to work with, and you don't have to be the only one who can defeat Wu Xian." The Forbidden Clan that betrayed the human race was made up of dozens of tribes, big and small, and you two are not the only leaders of these tribes with the surname Wu. Wu Chang waved his arm lazily and said coolly, "Indeed, apart from me and Wu Xian, there are also Wu Feng, Wu Sa, and Wu Wuyao. However, I am the only one who controls an army of the undead." Rolling his eyes, Wu Chang sneered and said, "I'll take you to a place. An army of the undead is something that no one in the world knows about except me. It is an army that can never be destroyed, just like me. They are all made up of the most elite warriors of the human race. You've made a big profit from this deal with you." Wu Qi's eyes flickered. An army of the undead? Was that true? Chapter 1070. Wu Qi, who was about to pounce on the 6 great celestial emperors and Wu Chang, pressed his hand down. He was itching to figure out what was going on with the army of undead, and what was the origin of the elixir of immortality. Wu Qi seemed to have heard of the names of Wu Xian and Wu Chang. When he was hanging around on Earth in the mortal world, Wu Qi had read some ancient books and seen some records about them. The elixir of immortality was a divine medicine that Wu Xian and the others had concocted, which could make living beings immortal. Wu Chang already had an immortal and indestructible body, which should have a lot to do with the immortal medicine. He also had an army of undead under his command, and all the warriors in the army were the elites of the alliance of human tribes. The temptation was too great. Needless to say, the human warriors of the alliance of human tribes were definitely much stronger than the Yu Xiong army and Flying Bear army. At that time, the alliance of human tribes had fought against the heaven, the earth, demons, ghosts, and all kinds of holy spirits. They were the real elites who had survived hundreds of battles, and those who were slightly weaker had long been eliminated from the battlefield. How could they be like Yu now? Apart from fighting a few battles with the Shizo dynasty and the Ling dynasty, they only knew how to bully those itinerant immortals and itinerant cultivators who had built their Taoist rite temples and sects on Pangu continent. When had they ever experienced a real bloody battle? He had to get his hands on such an iron-blooded army. Gently patting Ninetails on the head to temporarily soothe his strong appetite, Wu Qi squinted at Wu Chang and the 6 great celestial emperors, who were standing on the top of the mountain and laughing loudly. Sure enough, when Wu Chang said that he had an undead army under his command, the 6 great celestial emperors immediately regarded Wu Chang as their own blood brother. The two sides were very close, and there was an indescribable intimacy between them. Before long, the group of 7 rushed out of the cloud cave on clouds, heading in a direction away from the celestial court. Wu Qi pondered for a while, then hurried after them on Ninetails with Xia and Ao Buzan. Along the way, he informed Princess Zhonglu with a secret magic, asking her to bring reinforcements. After all, he had never seen the army of undead. If their fighting strength was beyond Wu Qi's imagination, he would need a few more helpers. Wu Qi was not so arrogant as to think that he could do whatever he wanted in the world. Pangu world was a vast world, and God knew what secrets it had. Not to mention the fact that Wu Qi was tracking the 6 great celestial emperors in the void. In the great hall of the capital city of New Wu, Dai slowly walked out of a golden light, his body glowing with a dazzling Buddhist light. He was holding a golden pestle with 9 dragons coiled around him, and wearing a faintly golden kasaya. The golden light slowly dissipated, revealing the sweat-drenched Buddha sentinel. His eyes, which had been full of vigor, were now filled with fatigue. Clearly, he had given the great overlord endless benefits through the wisdom imbuement, which was a great burden on Buddha Sentinel. Putting away the pestle, Dei put his palms together, bowed to guarding Will with a serious face, and said with a resonant voice, "I will never forget your kindness, Buddha. What Dei will do in the future will definitely be for the benefit of our Buddhist sect. We will definitely break those lackeys of the Buddhist sect and let them know who the true master of this world is." Nodding happily, guarding Will smiled and said to Dei, Amit Ba, Amit Ba. I am glad that you are so determined." After a brief moment of silence, guarding Will reached out his hand and beckoned toward the void. Immediately, 18 glowing treasures appeared around him. Each of them breathed in and out the surrounding natural energy like a living creature, letting out deep and long-breathing noises. A powerful pressure emanated from these treasures. Standing in the great hall, Monk Xiangchan and the others could not even stand straight when they saw these treasures. They could only put their palms together and bow respectfully to avoid the pressure. Dei stared at the 18 treasures with wide eyes. Each of them was a supreme treasure of primordial level, and they were spirit items with attributes that matched the cultivation techniques of Buddhism. After all, the primordial chaos world was extremely vast. All of the primordial chaos treasures were formed from the spiritual projections of the various treasures of the saints' world after they had been destroyed. As a result, there were many primordial chaos treasures. However, there were so many grand mist treasure artifacts, and among them, there might be some that leaned towards evil, cold, blazing hot, or violent. Even mighty figures like the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and 9 Tao patriarchs could not use all supreme treasures of primordial. Perhaps each of them had collected a considerable number of supreme treasures of primordial, but not many of them matched the attributes of their cultivation techniques and could be used by them. Not only were the 18 supreme treasures of primordial, but their energy waves were also very compatible with the cultivation techniques of Buddhism. Furthermore, the 18 spirit treasures were all extremely lethal offensive treasures. If they were to fall into the hands of someone with a high enough cultivation base, even a Tao integration stage mighty figure would have their body and consciousness damaged when they unleashed the 18 primordial supreme treasures in unison. Amit Ba. The supremacy chanted the name of Buddha. With a shake of his kasaya, the 18 dazzling numinous treasures landed in his hands. He put his palms together at Buddha Shuyi and laughed. "I won't stand on ceremony. I'm ashamed to accept these 18 treasures. With these treasures, if that guarding ox nose dares to glare at me, I'll flatten his Tao field and break all his bones." Buddha Shuyi nodded cheerfully. 18 grand mist treasures that were compatible with the Buddhism sect's cultivation technique was a huge loss to the 7 Buddhist ancestors. Even the will-guarding Buddha only had 4 grand mist treasures that were compatible with his cultivation technique, and he had given 2 of them to the Grand Unity Supremacy. Half of Buddha Shuyi's wealth had been invested in Supremacy De. This was exactly what he wanted to hear from Supremacy De. Monk Xiangchan and the rest waited until Reverend De kept the 18 treasures before they straightened their backs and chanted the name of Buddha in unison. They praised the Buddhist patriarchs for their boundless kindness, praised Dei for his great fortune, praised the prosperity of Buddhism, and said that the destiny of heaven and earth would be in the hands of Buddhism. These monks were all extraordinary in chanting scriptures. With a flick of their nimble tongues, all kinds of flattery turned into golden lotus flowers and fell down. For a moment, half of the territory of New Wu was filled with heavenly flowers, as if it was a grand gathering of Buddhism on Mount Vulture. The magnificent scene was too spectacular to be described with words. When Monk Xiangchan and the others finally stopped their flattery, Buddha Shuyi straightened his face and said to Dei with a solemn expression, "We've fallen into the trap set by the Wahuang clan in this deification plan, so we can't do anything. The various great plans of the Buddhist sect will depend on your hard work." Dei bowed and accepted the order. "I understand," he said in a deep voice. "If there is an obstacle, I'll naturally break it." Laughing complacently, Dei said triumphantly, "The 7 Buddhist patriarchs have given me a total of more than 1,000 eons worth of Buddhist power. This level of cultivation base is already a peerless expert in the realm of Tao breaking. I dare not belittle myself. With my cultivation base and my foundation, as long as the Tao fusing saints do not strike, who in the world can withstand a full blow from me? Shaking his thick neck, Dei said in a loud voice, all the things in the world are illusions. The power of the Buddhist League will destroy all illusions. No matter how many magical techniques and schemes the Tao League has, I'll just take it as a blow from a Vajra pestle. What is the use of all kinds of schemes in the face of absolute power? Buddhas, just watch and see how I destroy Great Wu and kick Great Yu's emperor down from the throne. Buddha Shuyi grew more and more complacent. He kept nodding in approval, and the joy in his heart was indescribable. Just now, the 7 Buddhist patriarchs had joined forces to infuse Dei with cultivation base. All their cultivation experience and understanding of the heavenly Tao had been gathered in his body, and each of them had infused him with a cultivation base of 200 eons worth of Buddhist power. During this process of enlightenment, Dei's fleshly body and divine soul had no secrets from the 7 Buddhist patriarchs. Putting aside the infinite dharma that Lord Dei had obtained from the 7 Buddhist patriarchs, his body, which was tempered by the essence of the Vajra dragon-taming wood, was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. At the very least, the 7 Buddhist patriarchs did some calculations. Ordinary supreme treasures of primordial chaos would not be able to harm a Dei Supremacy's body, much less a 7 treasures Kasaya made from half a piece of Vajra dragon-subduing wood. A Dei Supremacy's defense was so strong that it was beyond reason. It was completely beyond the level of a Tao-breaking expert. On the other hand, any random strike from him contained infinite power. The 7 Buddhist patriarchs had also calculated for a long time. A strike from Dei would be blasted into ashes, no matter what level of cultivation base one had and what treasures one used to protect oneself, unless one was protected by a supreme artifact of primal that specialized in defense. His defense was impregnable, and his attack was invincible. Putting aside intelligence, the Buddhist League never lacked resourceful people. What it lacked now was a general who could charge into the enemy lines with a murderous aura. The few Buddhist patriarchs even felt that if Emperor Wugo had not been wrongly chosen as the emperor of the Ling dynasty, but Dei, the murderous genius, had been placed on the throne, perhaps the Ling dynasty would have wiped out the Yu long ago. After all, Emperor Wugo was the reincarnation of an ancient Buddha. He was adept at eating vegetarian food and praying to the Buddha, but if he really wanted to govern the country, only someone like Dei could do it. When he thought of all that had happened, and when he thought of Dei's formidable cultivation base, Buddha Shuyi could not help but smile. He nodded with a smile and said in a deep voice, "Let's put off dealing with the Tao League for now. Now, I'll give you another one." After hesitating for a moment, Buddha Shuyi heaved a long sigh and said, "Unfortunately, a traitor has appeared in the Buddhist League, causing 6 revered ones, 36 ancient Buddhas, 36 Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, Vajras, heavenly kings, and countless other disciples to be imprisoned in the Vajra Muni. Dei, go find Wu Qi and exchange the Vajra Muni from him. Use whatever means you have, just bring the Vajra Muni back." After a moment of silence, Buddha Shuyi narrowed his eyes and said, "Remember, do not harm their lives. The Buddhist League cannot afford such a loss. As long as that bastard Wu Qi doesn't ask for too much, there's no harm in giving him some benefits." Dei looked at Buddha Shuyi curiously and asked, "Buddhist ancestor, how many things can this disciple promise him?" "Tizke, 1 revered one is worth 3 grand mist treasure artifacts, right?" Buddha Shuyi nearly vomited blood when he heard Dei's greedy demand. 1 revered one was definitely more useful than 3 grand mist treasure artifacts. One was a living person, and the other was an inanimate object. There was no need to say which was more important. However, was he really going to use 3 grand mist treasure artifacts to exchange for 1 revered one? Buddha Shuyi's heart throbbed with pain. After a long moment of silence, Buddha Shuyi communicated with the other Buddhist ancestors through his divine sense. Then he nodded slowly and said, "No matter what, bring the person back first. As for that bastard Wu Qi, as long as he doesn't go overboard, you can make the decision." Dei bowed respectfully with his palms clasped together. "I can make the decision?" Fine, then I'll really make the decision. Chapter 1071. In the boundless outer space, a chariot decorated with golden dragons and colorful clouds was flying at high speed. The 6 great celestial emperors and Wu Chang sat in the chariot, moving as fast as a beam of light. In the blink of an eye, they had covered a distance of 1,000,000,000,000 miles. Looking back, the enormous 33 heavens was just an inconspicuous dot in the vast starry sky. This chariot was the vehicle of great celestial emperor Ziwei Linging, and it was supposed to be driven by a true dragon. But after the Mount Rebellion of Ao Buzan, the mounts of the immortals of the celestial court and the animals used to pull the chariot were all gone, and even the great celestial emperors could not find enough flood dragons to pull the chariot. You can't just get a few big snakes to pull the chariot, can you? So, who was sitting in the chariot? The great celestial emperors? Or some demon king? Therefore, at the moment, the 6 great celestial emperors simply flew without a chariot. After all, the chariot was a rare chaos spirit treasure, and its flying speed was the fastest in the celestial court. Even if a Tao-breaking expert flew at full speed, he could not catch up with it. It was truly one of the best tools in the world for traveling and escaping. The chariot flew extremely fast, but when compared with Nine Tails, a chaotic creature who had just hatched from his shell, it was nothing to boast about. The 4 pincers of the nine-tailed beast could even tear space apart. The 9 tails stretched straight behind him, and dark beams of light shot out from the sharp hooks on the 9 tails, pushing his enormous body forward at a high speed. He was more than twice as fast as the chariot. As a predator at the top of the food chain in the chaotic world, how could 9 tails prey on those chaotic creatures if he did not even have this speed? A large amount of saliva sprayed in the void, and 9-tailed happily chased after it. Just now, Wu Qi finally said that if he captured the 6 great celestial emperors alive, after Wu Qi squeezed out every last bit of profit from them and gave their divine souls to Xia to devour, their bodies and cultivation bases would belong to 9 tails and Ao Buzan. As for how much food 9-tailed could snatch from Ao Buzan's mouth, it would depend on his own ability. Wu Qi would never participate in their affairs. Even though Wu Qi's words left a lot of holes, the delicious food was in sight, and the 9-tailed was full of energy to move forward. The group of people followed closely behind the 6 great celestial emperors and Wu Chang, and gradually arrived at a desolate starfield in the void of the outer domain. On the way, Princess Zhangli came to reinforce Wu Qi with catfish, Lord Xianxing, gold horn, silver horn, gold feather, and silver feather. Even the weakest among them was in the realm of Tao reasoning, and they were equipped with dozens of artifacts of virtue that had just been crafted. Whether it was in terms of cultivation base or magical artifacts, they were as strong as the 6 great celestial emperors. Furthermore, with the overall strength of Wu Qi, Princess Zhangli, Xia, Ao Buzan, and 9-tailed, Wu Chang and his companions would never be able to escape from their hands. 9-tailed was completely unaware that there were several more people competing with him for the delicious food. He sped forward with all his might, chased after the people in front of him, and rushed into the vast, desolate starfield. The so-called barren did not mean that there were no stars in this area. On the contrary, the density of the stars in this area was extremely high. Basically, the distance between the stars barely maintained a safe balance in terms of gravity. The slightest movement of a star could destroy the balance of the stars in this area and cause a violent collision between the stars. The group of people shuttled between these stars, which were very close to each other, and found that all the stars along the way were dead and barren. Wu Qi's divine sense swept through these stars and found that no matter what kind of stars they were, there was no heat inside them at all. It was as if some strange thing had devoured all the vitality of these stars. On some stars, huge mountains of bones could be seen piled up. It was clear that this was a place where life was flourishing, but for some unknown reason, it had become what it was today. The closer they went to the core of this starfield, the denser the surrounding stars became. In the end, the distance between the stars was only a few hundred feet. The huge gravitational force between the stars tore the stars apart, pulled out huge mountains, and connected the stars into one. The huge gravitational interaction on the stars caused these stars to change into all kinds of strange shapes. Wuqi always felt that this place was like a postmodern sculpture made of mud by some psychopath after getting drunk, revealing an indescribable evil and madness. The originally spacious void became a narrow corridor. After flying for a few more days along the corridor formed by the crisscrossing mountains between the stars, the front finally opened up, revealing a void filled with black gas. It was about 1,000,000 miles in circumference. Except for the black gas, there was nothing else in the void, not even a speck of dust. A scorching heat that made people's skin hurt rolled in the air. Wu Qi's expression changed slightly, and with a shake of his hand, he summoned the Vajramuni to protect the group. Ninetails twisted his long tail a little uneasily, and his divine sense clearly transmitted into Wu Qi's sea of consciousness. There was delicious food ahead, very delicious food. Following closely behind the 6 great celestial emperors and Wu Chang, the group of people passed through the thick layer of black gas that emitted scorching heat, and in the void ahead, a huge humanoid corpse was floating quietly. The man's whole body was dark, and there was no skin on the surface of his body. Instead, there was a thick layer of cuticle that looked like an insect's carapace, and the shiny black cuticle was densely covered with countless defensive runes. Obviously, this natural carapace had an extraordinary defensive power. The corpse was roughly humanoid, but his toes were extremely long, like the feet of an insect. His palms also showed the unique shape of a certain insect's brachiopod, and his head was like the head of a huge longhorn beetle. Apart from that, the rest of the body structure was not much different from that of a human. At a glance, Wu Qi recognized that it was the corpse of a chaos fiend god, who was transforming from his original insect form to a human form. The original body of this chaos fiend god should be a huge longhorn beetle, 90% of which was about to transform into a human form, but before the last step was completed, he died completely. There was a huge crack on his head, which almost split his head in half. The crack went straight through his internal organs, and some translucent things that looked like black crystals were piled up near the wound, which should be condensed from the blood of this fiend god. The strange heat was spreading from this huge body, which was millions of miles long. Only a chaos fiend god could have such a huge body. Although this chaos fiend god had fallen and his divine soul had been destroyed, his body still retained a certain degree of activity. Blood was still flowing in most of his body, and his body tissues were still working normally. If he was given enough time, this half of his body should be able to give birth to another powerful creature. What a pity, what a pity! Wu Qi let out a long sigh. He exchanged a look with Ao Buzan, and they both sighed with a hint of sympathy. Both of them were chaos fiend gods, and they were the kind of people who had survived a disaster. If not for the help of the Wahuang clan, both of them would have died long ago, and not even a corpse would be left behind. Although this fiend god was dead, more than half of his body was still alive, which could be considered as an existence in a different sense. What made Wu Qi and Ao Buzan even more delighted was that if the thick black shell on his body could be peeled off and refined, it would be a top-grade armor no weaker than a Grand Miss Supreme artifact. If the flesh and blood on his body were used to feed Ao Buzan's children over the years, it would definitely strengthen their bones and greatly increase their strength. Good stuff. Wu Qi put his palms together and bowed. We can't let it go. After we take away the useful things from his body, I'll call a few monks to perform a Buddhist ritual to help him ascend from the dead. Zixuan, make a note of this. When everything is settled, just spend some money to hire a few obedient monks to recite some scriptures. Ao Buzan let out a strange laugh. Just as he was about to say that Wu Qi's behavior was a little hypocritical, Wu Chang and the others had already left the carriage and flew towards the fiend god's body. The fiend god's body was over 1,000,000 miles long, and the widest part was over 200,000 miles wide. It was much bigger than some of the stars in the void. If crops could be grown on his body, it could probably accommodate billions of ordinary people. Wu Qi's spirit power enveloped the fiend god's body. As he expected, there was a thick layer of atmosphere on the surface of the fiend god's body, and the temperature was just right, and the oxygen content was very high, enough for people to live comfortably on it. An inexhaustible life force could be sensed from the fiend god's body. In some specific depressions on the surface of the fiend god's body, some people had planted a large number of mushroom-shaped crops. These crops were nutritious, at least more nutritious than rice. Right where Wu Qi's spirit power scanned, he saw tens of sturdy men, who were over 10 feet tall and wearing ragged clothes, standing quietly on a protruding piece of shell. Their bodies were emitting a scorching heat, which had a strong corrosive power and was filled with a violent evil power. Their auras clashed and rubbed against each other in the air, causing a loud creaking noise from time to time. The cultivation technique practiced by these men was similar to the Yu's cultivation technique of the human race, but it was different at the same time. Their auras were as deep as the ocean, and vaguely revealed an aura that was several times stronger than that of the Yu's Hongmeng Panga Heaven warriors. Their bodies were covered with a thick layer of dust, as if they had been standing there for thousands of years. Wu Qi's expression flickered. There were dozens of fearsome warriors who were as strong as primordial immortals here. If they were the so-called army of the undead, and they had the characteristics of immortality like Wu Chang, it would be a very terrifying force. About 1,000 miles away from these hundreds of burly men, there was a city built with boulders, measuring about 100 miles in circumference. Surprisingly, there were hundreds of thousands of ordinary people living in the city. The city obviously retained the characteristics of a slave society. Only a few people in the city enjoyed the offerings of the other 99% of the people. The lower-class people were ordered around by the upper-class people, but no one dared to show any dissatisfaction. Laughing strangely, Wu Chang transformed into a beam of black light and plunged toward the city. The huge human face on his chest could not wait to spit out a black seal, which was about the size of a fist and shaped like a strange beast's head. A cold look flashed in Wu Qi's eyes. With a sway of his body, he came next to Wu Chang in a flash. With a wave of his hand, the seal was already in his hand. Chapter 1072. As soon as the seal was in his hand, Wu Qi knew it was a good item. It was the size of a fist and weighed hundreds of thousands of kilograms. If not for Wu Qi, he wouldn't have been able to lift it. Even with Wu Qi's current physique, the meridians in his palms were frozen stiff. If it were any other immortal, their immortal body would have long been frozen into pieces. As soon as the seal was in his hand, a sharp, unpleasant wail of ghosts and howl of wolves rushed into his sea of consciousness, shaking Wu Qi's soul and stirring up a hurricane in his sea of consciousness. It almost sent Wu Qi's soul flying out of his sea of consciousness. Hastily, Wu Qi performed an incantation gesture and cast 13 sealing incantation gestures onto the seal. With that, he barely managed to restrain the violent backlash from the seal. It was a treasure, a natal treasure refined by someone's blood and soul. Therefore, when it was in Wu Qi's hand, it immediately attacked Wu Qi like a madman. The seal grew heavier and heavier, and the cold air grew stronger. It was so cold that Wu Qi's palms began to form black ice flakes. The wail of ghosts that could shake one's soul shook the 13 seals Wu Qi made. Wu Qi's body trembled violently, almost revealing his true form. Gritting his teeth, Wu Qi returned to Nine Tails back in a flash. Princess Zhongli's eyes widened. The 5-colored divine light behind her transformed into 5 beautiful light curtains that poured down like peacocks. In the blink of an eye, they struck the seal tens of thousands of times. Countless ancient divine runes poured out like raindrops, forming 36 layers of restrictive light curtains on the surface of the seal. Wu Qi chanted the name of Buddha and silently exercised the supreme mystic art of the Buddhist League, the Dharamata Heart Sutra, which was cultivated by the heart-guarding Buddha and given to him by Supremacy Great E. His divine soul radiated a vast Buddhist light, and a viscous liquid the color of molten purple gold flowed out of it, condensing into a thumb-sized purple gold relic above his head. Using the mystic technique of the scroll of stealing to imitate the Dharamata Heart Sutra, Wu Qi had condensed the supreme natal relic of the Buddhist League in a flash. An enormous wave of divine will swept out like raging waves, turning into golden torrents visible to naked eyes and shooting out of his eyes. Mixed with the indestructible Yuan Ling true flame that could incinerate anything, they smashed into the fist-sized seal that looked like an evil ghost. Wrapped in the Yuan Ling true flame, the enormous divine will smashed into the seal's core, transforming into a 6-headed, 24-armed golden body of the Buddha, which slammed toward an evil ghost in the seal's core. The evil ghost looked exactly the same as Wu Chang, except that Wu Chang had 3 heads and 6 arms, with a huge face on his chest, while this evil ghost had 2 heads and 12 arms, with a ferocious ghost face on both his chest and back. The evil ghost flew up into the sky while spewing black smoke that smelled fishy, reaching out 12 sharp claws and digging toward the golden body of the Buddha transformed from Wu Chi's divine will. Just now, when Wu Chang saw the huge body of the celestial fiend, he was extremely excited. Without hesitation, he leaped out of the chariot and rushed toward the dozens of ragged warriors standing on top of the celestial fiend. Triumphantly, he pulled out the seal, the only extraordinary treasure that could control this army of the undead. It was called the Seal of 10,000 Ghosts, an extraordinary treasure personally crafted by a famous and powerful oracle during the era of the alliance of human clans. It was said that he practiced the mystic arts of ghosts and deities with his human body, and in just over 10,000 years, he was almost able to reach the realm of Tao fusing by relying on the mystic arts of ghosts and deities. However, the great oracle was extremely jealous of this. When the gods and deities of the world joined forces, billions of evil ghosts would devour the human race from the ground. Therefore, the great oracle used his own body as a cage to devour the million most powerful evil ghosts, then used his own body as a material to detonate his natal ghost fire, refining the million evil ghosts and his own body into the seal of 10,000 ghosts. It was known as the Myriad Ghost Seal, which had a strong restraining effect on all spirit bodies in the world. No matter how strong one was, as long as one belonged to the ghost Tao, such as Gui Tunluo, the leader of the heavenly ghost realm, he would be easily killed by the seal, which could restrain all ghosts. Once touched by the seal of 10,000 ghosts, other immortals such as immortal souls, nascent spirits, divine souls, and Yuan Ling would be crushed to pieces. In addition to its formidable offensive power, the seal also had the power to imprison souls and command all the ghosts in them. The army of undead that Wu Chang had secretly raised came from large human clans. They were the most elite warriors of those clans, and many of them were even the descendants of clan leaders or clan leaders. They were all outstanding human warriors. Which one of them would easily listen to someone else's order? Therefore, the souls of all the soldiers were imprisoned in the seal of 10,000 ghosts, and only their fleshly bodies could walk outside. Anyone with the seal of 10,000 ghosts could command the army of undead, and once they left the seal, even Wu Chang could not order them to do anything. But as soon as Wu Chang took out the seal, a dark shadow flashed in front of him, and his hand felt lighter. The bone-chilling seal, which exuded a threatening evil power, had disappeared without a trace. Less than 1,000 feet away from his feet were the dozens of ragged soldiers who stood motionless on the ground. They were now slowly raising their heads, staring at Wu Chang with cold, emotionless eyes that looked like puppets. Wu Chang was so frightened that his hair stood on end. "Celestial Emperor, did you steal my seal of 10,000 ghosts?" he growled hoarsely. "Bastards, are all your promises bullshit? My 10,000 ghost seal, 10,000 ghost seal. Damn it, if it wasn't you, then who stole it? There are no outsiders here. Who stole it?" Wu Chang howled furiously, pulled out 6 double-edged axes out of nowhere, and swung them at the great celestial emperor. Wu Chang used all of his strength in this strike. Lightning flashed on the broad axe, and black smoke and evil chi clung to the axe head. The blade of the axe was twisted and blurred, and a pungent smell of blood spread in the air. Each axe strike was imbued with 49,000 layers of curses, all kinds of evil poisons, and a mysterious power that could shake one's soul. Great Celestial Emperor Zui Lingying's eyes flickered as a bright light shot out from between his brows. In the next moment, a mirror that matched the positions of the 12 stars emerged and hovered before him, blocking Wu Chang's frenzied hacking. Just now, he saw Wu Chang take out a seal. Before he had time to investigate what the seal was, he only saw a flash of light beside Wu Chang, and the seal in Wu Chang's hand disappeared without a trace. When Wu Chang roared so loudly, the 6 great celestial emperors suddenly realized that this seal was the artifact that Wu Chang used to control those strange burly men below. Perhaps, as long as he had this seal, he could control those so-called immortal warriors? If that was the case, the army of undead was enough. Why did they need Wu Chang? The 6 great celestial emperors quickly exchanged a glance. Then, the South Emperor cast out a red bell and rose into the sky. 99 vermilion birds were hovering over the bell, and a divine fire was burning half the sky red. The terrible heat swept down and turned into 99 fiery dragon pillars that wrapped Wu Chang up. The South Emperor yelled, "Wu Chang, don't try to blame others. What exactly is that seal of yours? Why did it suddenly disappear?" Wu Chang snorted coldly. He did not answer the South Emperor's question, but just kept hacking with his eyes red and teeth clenched. The arcs of cold light tore through the void like thunderbolts, shattering one fiery dragon pillar after another. Countless flames landed on Wu Chang's body, causing his body to sizzle. His muscles and bones were all burnt to ashes. However, new flesh and blood kept growing out of the black ashes, and soon, Wu Chang's body was restored to its original state. The 6 celestial emperors were shocked. The red bell of the South Emperor was a famous treasure of the celestial court. It contained the innate vermilion bird divine fire, which could incinerate almost everything in the world. In the hands of a Tao-breaking expert, this bell could even turn time and space into nothingness. However, the innate vermilion bird divine fire seemed to have no effect on Wu Chang. Although it could burn part of his body could constantly regenerate. Was this guy really an immortal existence? He was not a Tao-fusing expert, so he should not have such a divine power. Wu Qi, who witnessed all this, could not help but chuckle softly. Wu Chang's power showed that his so-called army of undead was not fake. If the army of undead had the same vitality as Wu Chang, Wu Qi, who had obtained the Myriad Ghost Seal, would have a terrifying army in his hands. At the core of the Myriad Ghost Seal, Wu Qi, who had transformed into the Golden Buddha, chanted a mantra, and waves of flame-like Buddhist light swept out in all directions, burning the skin and flesh of the incoming evil spirits. Thick black smoke kept gushing out of the evil spirits' bodies, and their figures kept dimming and blurring. Wu Chang roared in pain and shouted angrily, "Who is breaking my mind stigma in the Myriad Ghost Seal? Which bastard is trying to break my mind stigma? The Myriad Ghost Seal is mine. You can't take what's mine." Before his voice died away, Wu Qi chanted a mantra, and the evil spirits in the Myriad Ghost Seal suddenly turned into thick smoke and dissipated. In terms of the strength of the spirit, Wu Qi's spirit, who had cultivated the Dharamata Heart Sutra, was thousands of times stronger than Wu Chang's. All these years, Wu Chang had been imprisoned in the celestial court mystic realm, and his vitality had been greatly damaged. His spirit had not yet recovered, and the evil spirits in the Myriad Ghost Seal were just a clone of him. How could they withstand Wu Qi's attack? Not to mention Wu Chang, even the clone of the Buddha was killed by Wu Qi. After killing Wu Chang's mind stigma, Wu Qi's eyebrows split open, and a drop of purple blood mixed with a wisp of his spirit shot out and imprinted into the Myriad Ghost Seal. A ghostly howl rang out, and a huge wave of mind power blasted into Wu Qi's mind. His spirit suddenly connected with a total of 8,000 souls that were crazily cursing and roaring. These souls seemed to be in hell, and they were crazily cursing the owner of the Myriad Ghost Seal. At the same time, they were cursing everything in the world that they could think of. These souls had completely gone mad, and they no longer had any sanity. But through these crazy souls, Wu Qi's spirit could connect with 8,000 powerful beings. Through these souls, who were imprisoned in the Myriad Ghost Seal and could never be reincarnated, Wu Qi saw the other end of the Myriad Ghost Seal, which was connected to 8,000 fleshly bodies that shone brightly like the sun and emitted a strong aura. That's great, Wu Qi thought to himself. Suddenly, thousands of figures rose into the sky from around the gigantic body of the fiend celestial god. With just a slight movement, these figures tore the void apart with their physical strength and surrounded the 6 great celestial emperors and Wu Chang. The South Emperor, who was in a stalemate with Wu Chang while driving the divine clock, was stunned. A figure suddenly flashed behind him and punched him in the middle of the back. With a deafening boom, the South Emperor's immortal robe was torn to shreds, revealing a large patch of white skin on his back. A 3-inch deep fist print was deeply imprinted on the South Emperor's back. The punch almost pierced through his primordial unity golden body. A mouthful of blood mixed with pieces of internal organs sprayed thousands of feet away. Hastily, the South Emperor summoned the divine clock to protect himself. Wu Chang stopped his attack. Seeing the undead warriors attacking the South Emperor, he knew that it was not the 6 great celestial emperors who had snatched the myriad ghost seal. Wu Qi smiled, nodded, and said in a low voice, "Only 30%? Then, let's capture them alive." A deep black light flashed across the myriad ghost seal, and the 8,000 undead warriors moved at the same time. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.